hopefully, the way it's going, as we end it this afternoon, we're either going to come into a decision, which, to be honest with you, this afternoon seems impossible, or we're going to get, I don't know how long he's going to keep him floated. Because there's four jurors that are dug in deep. Saying no. They, according to the evidence that the state gave us, they are not guilty.
Oh, we too. Yeah.
I'd like to go to a council meeting with 128 council people in New York City. I went to the council meeting in New York. Girl I know, and they have 128 council people. Yeah, we get a small little yard. And they like to be heard.
Nine. Tell the chairman it's 2 days. Chairman, it's time. 7:30.
Ready to go? Yeah. I want to call a zoning board meeting of adjustment of December the 13th, 2017 to order. Will everyone please stand for the salute to the flag? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
just want to make an announcement before we start that Gillette Enterprises, case number 16-26, has been held over till the January meeting. Also, interstate outdoor advertising on Raritan Street and Cheesequake Road has also been carried over until January of 2018. The only application on the agenda for tonight is 17-29, which is Recovery Centers of America, 901 Ernstine Road. First, I'll start with a roll call.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Kreismer? Here. Ms. Cataldo?
Here.
Mr. Corrigan?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Here.
Mr. Emma?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
I want to note first that the notice of this meeting has been satisfied in accordance with Chapter 231 PL 1975 by advertising in the Home News Tribune, notifying the Sentinel Publishing Company and the Star Ledger, and posting on the bulletin board and filing with the Borough Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Hemmelman begins, the application 1626, which is Gillette Enterprises, will be carried to the January meeting, which is January 24th, 2018, without any further notice. And the same thing with the, and actually there are two interstate outdoor advertising applications, 1713 and 1715, and those will be carried as well to that January 24th meeting without further notice. So if anyone is here for either of for any of those three applications, you will not receive any additional notice. They will be heard on January 24th, 2018.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name is David Himmelman, and I represent the applicant 901 Ernstine Road LLC, which, as you know, is affiliate of RCA. Mr. Chairman, as you recall from the November 8th meeting, we did have several witnesses that appeared and testified. Since that time, and we I believe concluded with Mr. Higgins' testimony. And so for tonight, I have two additional witnesses. I'd like to recall one of our witnesses from RCA, Dr. Carisi, who you recalled at the last meeting, and primarily to address the issue that I've spoken to Mr. Sachs about, and also was referenced in Mr. Leon Cabell's memo regarding certain issues relative to the RCA Massachusetts facilities, and Dr. Carisi will address that matter. And then Christine Cofone, our planner, additional planner, we will have her testify on certain planning issues relative to this application. And that would conclude our direct testimony. And then obviously, I presume at that point, Mr. Chairman, subject to further questions from the board, obviously the public's here and we can see how the rest of the evening progresses. But that's sort of the lineup that we were thinking. So, okay? So if the board doesn't have any questions at this point, I will call Dr. Carisi up. And Mr. Sachs, if I recall, she had been sworn in at the last meeting, but we can certainly swear her in again.
No, that's okay. You're still under oath. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Carisi, good evening. Now, you've had an opportunity to, I guess, review Mr. Leon Cabell's memorandum, and he had asked us to sort of discuss certain issues regarding the facts and circumstances relative to two facilities that are managed and operated by RCA. So if you would sort of give the board a brief overview of that, and then we can discuss and respond to any questions that the board may have.
So I was asked to talk to some extent about the incidences up in Boston. We have two treatment facilities up in Boston. One is in Danvers, Massachusetts, and that is a place where we had a patient death, and we had a second patient that was rushed to the hospital and consequently died at the hospital afterwards. So there were two deaths. The other facility is in Westminster, about an hour away, And in Westminster, that was a facility that, unlike our others, we bought it when there was a group of people that got it together, kind of rehabbed it, and were going to open it. And we bought it, and it came with some staff that were already committed to that. So we basically bought the building, the zoning, and some of the staff people to open it up and to run it as an RCA facility. So let me just go first about the deaths. So in February 2017, you know, the reality is that this is a deadly disease. People die from all kinds of things with this disease, not just overdoses, but from all kinds of cardiac or other events. I can't get into real specifics that would violate HIPAA, but I feel like I can tell you. We had one older gentleman died of natural causes. He was with us less than 20 hours. He was a long-term, multiple heroin, cocaine, and alcohol abuser. There was a second death in August of 2017. This person was rushed to the hospital in distress, and we don't have a final determination of cause of death on that person. The important thing to know is that we reported these to the state when they happened, the way we should, the way we always will. When the articles came out about this, that's when the state came in afterwards. They'd already known about it and looked into it. They came in after the articles, and they stopped admissions in the Danvers site only. Okay, so the Westminster site, up, running, has been since that day, still is. And in the Danvers site, they didn't come in and close the site, which they could, and state regulators do that. They came in and they stopped admissions. And what they said to us was that if you surrender your license, we'll expedite it for you to do a whole new full review and get you your license back. And that will be better for us than if you say you won't surrender your license. We surrendered our license. Since then, actually, the state regulators have been great. We've been working with them on every nook, cranny, policy. They have looked at everything from fire extinguishers to medication storage to training programs to clinical care. And they visited us a third time now. The last visit they made to us was on December 4th. We're still waiting for the report from that visit, and we expect to be open again there this month.
Now, just for the record, the regulatory agency referring to Massachusetts,
It's called BSAS. It's the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services for Massachusetts. It's what's called the Single State Agency.
So they came in, you said, and they did a review of the Danvers facility. Is that correct?
Yeah. They came and they reviewed. They've been there 3 times. The reason for that is because they have to review the detox separately from the residential care. They call on ATS. They have to review it separately, and there's a different team that reviews the residential care.
And have they completed their review and
What?
investigation?
We believe they've completed their review and investigation. They were very positive when they were there on the 4th of December, and they said that you will get our written, we can't do anything until we get a written report from them. And again, we expect to be open this month.
Okay, but thus far, there's been no indication from that agency that there's been any wrongdoing?
There's been no allegation of wrongdoing or cause of death assigned to us.
And so what's the status now?
The status right now is that we're waiting for their report, and we, again, expect to be open this month, could be next week.
So you anticipate getting licensed with that, correct?
Yes, we do. Yeah. The Westminster site is on a provisional license. That is exactly what they do with everybody. You come in, a state gives you a provisional license, particularly if you're a new healthcare provider in the field. If you don't have sites up and running in that state already, they always give you a provisional license, and then they reevaluate in 6 or 12 months and make a decision on whether they're going to give you another provisional or a full license. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions, just based on your testimony, Dr. Carisi. The 2 deaths that occurred, and they were both at the Danvers site? Okay.
Patients were both at Danvers, yes.
Were those deaths attributed to any overdoses?
The first one was natural causes.
That doesn't answer my question. Was it attributed to an overdose?
No.
Okay, and what
No.
about the other death?
The second death, we do know that there was prescribed Suboxone and some cocaine in his system, but the death has not been linked to the overdose, but I can only imagine that's a part of it.
All right, and how long had that patient been in the facility from the time of admission till the time of the death?
Yeah. That patient had been in the Westminster facility for about 2 months, and he transferred over to Danvers, and he had been at Danvers for 7 days. that it's, one thing I will tell you is that that patient, one of the things we did with that patient, which you'll remember from our last meeting that I told you we never do anymore, is that we allowed them to have access to their cell phone and the internet. And that is something that we make no exceptions for anymore, because we can imagine that that's how the drugs came.
Okay. And you referenced a written report that was going to be issued by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yes.
Has that been issued yet?
No, the site visit was the 4th, and we're awaiting that report.
All right. And when that report gets issued, and I can ask this through council, perhaps this board can be provided with a copy of that report? Sure. It's a
Absolutely.
public record, right?
Yeah, it is public record.
Okay, thank you. All right, my last question to you is, you mentioned an agency called the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services.
Yes.
That's a regulatory agency in Massachusetts.
Yes, it
Is
is.
there an equivalent agency in New Jersey?
Yes, there is.
What agency is that?
The New Jersey, I'm sorry, New Jersey Office of Licensure is what yours is called.
New Jersey Office of Licensure?
Yeah. And that's the agency that licenses Lighthouse, our current New Jersey site.
Well, that's a licensing agency. Is there an oversight agency that deals with your facility in, I know you have one in Hamilton and one in Cape May,
In Mays Landing.
in Mays Landing, down in Mays Landing. What's the agency that provides the oversight, though? I understand that New Jersey Office of Licensure is just a licensing facility, just like all other professions
Yeah.
and
But-
other types of businesses are licensed. But what's the regulatory agency that provides the oversight to your
Yeah.
particular?
It's
type
the
of
same.
business?
In Boston, BSAS gives you the license and they do the oversight. They come and do site visits. All the state agencies do site visits themselves and provide oversight.
All right, so the New Jersey Office of Licensure does do site visits?
Yes. That's the CEO of our New Jersey site.
And how often do those visits occur?
I'm sorry.
If you want to come up, sir, that's, if
I'm
if
sorry.
you
He
wanna
knows
bring him
the
up, that's
details
fine.
of this state better than I do.
Might be better if he comes up.
He is our CEO of the Mays Landing facility, which is very similar to Sayreville, and he testified here before.
He did testify previously, I know that.
I'm sorry. He knows these details better than I do. That's fine. Thanks, David.
And you know, sir, since it's a new hearing, we'll swear you in. Please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the true self you got?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, and your affiliation with the applicant.
My name is David Dorshu, and that is spelled D-O-R-S-C-H-U. And I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Recovery Centers of America site in Mays Landing.
Okay. All right, so my question to Dr. Carisi, and I guess you can answer it, is I understand that you get licensed by this New Jersey Office of Licensure. What type of oversight, however, and when I mean by oversight is actual site visits, audits of your facility, random visits, how often does that occur? And tell me the procedure that occurs.
The Office of Licensing is under the Department of Human Services, it's being transitioned to under the Department of Health. They conduct annual inspections. And what they're doing when they conduct their inspections is they are just reviewing all of their regulations and assessing if we are compliant with those regulations. So at the end of that site visit, you perhaps have some deficiencies, and they issue a report, and then you respond with a plan of correction. So in my facility, we are in good standing with the state, full licensure for our inpatient program as well as outpatient.
Okay, and are there any other regulatory agencies in the state of New Jersey that provide any oversight?
In the state of New Jersey, no. We do have accreditation bodies, the Joint Commission on the Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations. That's an accreditation body. But to answer your question, no.
So it's just this one agency?
Yes, yes.
They come in annually? Is that by
They come in
state law?
annually. Yeah, that's the licensure span of 12 months.
And when they come to the facility, how often do they stay at the facility? How long, how comprehensive is the review?
It's extremely comprehensive. They're there typically for 2 to 3 days, and they are inspecting everything from the cleanliness of the kitchen to the personnel files of all the staff. They are reviewing medical records of the clients. They are reviewing our quality assurance procedures. So it's very comprehensive.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
You have a question, sir?
I have a question. In view of this inspection you're talking about, are you aware of when they come? Are you notified ahead of time when they're coming?
No, you are not.
You're not.
In the state of New Jersey, you are not.
So they just come when they feel as though they want to come?
Correct. It's called an unannounced inspection. And so you have to be, you know, the idea is that you are prepared 100% of the time. You are in 100% compliance. So you're upholding the regulations.
But it is once a year?
It is once a year, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Doctor, I have a question for you.
Certainly.
Doctor, you were here on the meeting of November the 8th, that special meeting.
Yes.
This incident, and you testified on that date, November the 8th. This incident, or these incidents that occurred up in Massachusetts, were in August.
February and August.
Would you tell the board why you didn't mention that to us when you were here the last time?
Why I didn't mention to you that at another site we had a death? Because it was
Yes.
still under investigation. You know, it wasn't something that, the reality is that people die from this disease all the time. And while you hope it never happens, you just want to make sure you give quality care. I wasn't trying to hide it. I didn't know that it was something that I should bring up.
Well, there were two incidents, not one, but two in one place. And the last one was in
August 1.
August the 18th, and the other one was in February.
Yes.
And yet you were here in November, and you never mentioned to us once about what had occurred back then. And I was wondering why you didn't tell us about that.
I didn't know.
Dr. Reese, is it fair to say, number one, the matter was under investigation then, and at this point today, we have a clearer picture that, A, there's no evidence of any wrongdoing, and most likely you will receive your licensure back. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, but I just didn't, I didn't think that it was something that I would bring up for New Jersey.
Any questions?
Yeah, if I could. Thank you. I'll ask you, Doctor, I'm not sure if this is the right person to ask or not, but some articles we were reading about those things up in Massachusetts said, I believe it said the staffing was under proportion that it should have been. Could you address that?
I really can. So again, when we took those facilities on, Danvers was one that we hired ourselves. In Westminster, we had a group of people working there. People were hired with different job titles. People were, there was a CEO there that we eventually had to get rid of. There were a number of allegations that were made by some disgruntled employees to the newspaper that were put out in there. The fact that we have shoddy care is just not accurate. The fact that our staffing ratios are higher than the state requires, so that was found untrue. The staffing ratio at Lighthouse in Mays Landing right now is higher than your state requires. That's just the way that we do it. Again, a lot of this was from disgruntled employees that was proven false when they looked into it. They, if we had a fault, I would say one thing we did poorly was electronic health records. We had a little glitch with those. We didn't train on those enough, and so that's what where you'll see there were also accusations that patients didn't get treatment. That was completely unfounded. We went through hours and hours and hours of videotape. Like I said last time I was here, we have video cameras in everywhere, every group room, every room except the bedroom and the bathroom, which were not allowed by law, and we documented and showed the state of people going in and out of group rooms all day, all the time.
A couple other questions. Now, I believe in South Jersey, there was a couple towns that you folks were declined when you came in front of a zoning board.
That's correct.
Haddonfield,
Could you address why that might have happened?
I'm not sure I can say why the board declined us.
I'm not sure what your question is.
Well, you were presenting in front of a zoning board in the past.
Right.
I don't remember the towns. I don't have my records with me. And you were declined.
Gloucester Township.
Gloucester, and you were declined. I was just wondering why they declined you. Is that public record? I don't know.
Well, there wasn't an actual decline, that's correct. Anyone want to address that? attorney with, also an in-house attorney with RCA.
My name is,
Even though you're counsel, I'm going to probably have to swear you in because it sounds to me like you're going to be a witness, so.
All right.
Please raise your right hand, sir. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation with the applicant.
My name is Edmund Campbell. My last name is spelled Campbell. I'm a partner of the law firm of Campbell Rocco Law, and our law firm serves as counsel to RCA. I'm licensed as an attorney in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey. Grew up and lifelong resident of New Jersey.
Okay.
So there are, in 2 municipalities, we made applications. One is Gloucester Township, and the other is Haddonfield. And in Gloucester Township, we originally got some site plan approvals, and then we had site plan approvals denied. We took appeals from those denials, and subsequently, our appeal was essentially sustained. The court directed the planning board to convene and rehear the matter at its first available hearing and grant us the relief that we had been requested, which they did. With regard to Haddonfield, we made an application there, and candidly, in response to litigation, they are offering to buy the property from us. Okay. Which is a completely different avenue to pursue, but I think it is not accurate to say that we made applications in other municipalities that were denied for the reasons that we understand you're concerned about tonight. They have nothing to do with that whatsoever. And in one instance, the court sent it back and it was approved, and the other, we're working out a different compromise.
So in Gloucester Township, it was remanded, correct?
Correct.
And then ultimately.
It was a consent order, but the board and we agreed, but the judge sent it back.
There
It
was
a
a
consent.
denial at some point,
Correct.
That's
Which took an appeal, and it went back to the planning board.
So these were prerogative writ lawsuits?
Correct.
And I'm assuming they were use variance applications as well?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, they were both site plan applications, not use variances. But actually, there's other litigation as well regarding under Americans with Disabilities Act.
I
and
understand.
Fair housing and all sorts of other issues.
All right. I mean, I just caution the board. Obviously, what happened in another town is of no relevance for purposes of your consideration before this board. Every application stands on its merits in this particular town. So what happened in Gloucester, what happened in Haddonfield, what happened anywhere else in New Jersey in terms of an approval or a denial is of no relevance. Just want you to be aware of that.
If I could, I just want to say, I mean, there's universal agreement that people are dying in unprecedented numbers, and there's a need. But frankly, nobody wants it in their community, and that's why we spend so much time at zoning meetings trying to, be very upfront about what we do, who we do it with, how we do it, and what we'll be able to and willing to do to accommodate concerns. Middlesex County had 5,705 residents who were admitted to substance abuse treatment last year alone. So the need here is great. We also had, a couple of weeks ago, we were coming to transport a resident here to our Lighthouse facility a couple hours away. The car was due at 7:30, and again, they had to drive an hour and a half, and the person overdosed and died at 7 o'clock at night. So right before we got there to take them all the way back out to Lighthouse, they passed away. So there's a huge need, but again, everybody doesn't want it in their neighborhood, which I understand.
Yeah, I just have 2 more questions. Yeah, now, this facility here in Saraville, I believe, was it 145 beds, is it?
I believe it's 149 with an expected occupancy of 90%, which is 134.
And what is the largest facility you have now?
Danvers was 207 beds, and we have one in Devon that with an expansion is going to be 200, I think, and 40.
Okay. And then my last question is, we talked about the deaths that you had up in Massachusetts. Has there ever been other instances that you had to call the police or with any of your facilities that created problems or anything else like that?
Not that created problems, and I don't know if you got a letter from the chief of police in Mays Landing who said that he was really glad that we were there, and what? Mayor, right?
Yeah, we received a
from the
letter
mayor,
from the mayor of Hamilton, yes.
Saying that he was very glad we were there. But to answer your question directly, if a patient has a heart attack, or if a patient, in the one case where a patient used drugs, when we call an ambulance, for whatever reason, in some states, the police are obligated to arrive as well.
I understand. I'm talking about more of a criminal aspect, more so than, emergency aspect where someone's, dying or something like
No,
that. So,
no, not
okay.
to my knowledge.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Doctor, I have another question.
yeah, thank you, sir.
correct me if I'm wrong with this question. My understanding, at the Serval facility, there'll be no Medicare, no Medicaid, no scholarship fund, and no beds for people without insurance. Am I correct in that?
No, you're not correct with that. We Scholarship as a company more than any place I have ever worked. I forget what it was, but we've only been open a year and a half, and we've been $3 million or so in scholarships across all of our sites. So we scholarship all the time. Some of our sites have Medicaid, and some do not. I do not know what the New Jersey negotiation will be for that, but I don't believe Lighthouse has Medicaid. And so my guess is that the state is not negotiating a rate that we can even come close to, so that we probably won't have Medicaid, but we will have scholarships.
Okay, you're talking about the Serval facility now.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have to have insurance?
I would say that 97% of our folks have insurance. Well, if you look at scholarships, some of our scholarships don't have insurance. About 97% are insurance, and then there's about 2% that are cash or self-pay. But the insurance that we take, what's really important is that there's not other sites. There's one other site, I think, in New Jersey that takes what's called in-network insurance, which means your insurance is in-network with us. We have a negotiated rate with them. We don't bill them what's called out-of-network, which is a much higher billing procedure, and insurance is really disliked. So we try and go in-network for the benefit of the patient and for the ability to serve many more people.
Can you explain to the board the scholarship fund that would be set up at the Serval facility?
I don't know, because we don't have a dedicated amount, and we don't have we basically scholarship a lot of people when we open, because it's better for everybody to treat 10 or 12 patients than 1 or 2 or 3. So we scholarship a lot when we open. We scholarship sometimes when people's insurance runs out, but if the board wanted something more formal, we could probably put that together.
Well, maybe you can explain in your other facilities. I think the chairman's looking for a general sense of how the scholarship program would work. Is that correct,
Yes,
Mr.
that's
Chairman?
correct.
So if you could just, maybe Lighthouse or one of the other facilities.
I'll give you, to the best of my ability, I'll give you. Typically, it's a fireman's daughter, or it's a teacher's son, and they can't afford to put them through. Sometimes it's an employee's spouse or an employee's friend. Sometimes it's been I won't say the mayor, but it's been a public official's kid. And, again, I've worked in hundreds of treatment programs. I've never seen the volume of scholarships. And I know that that's not a tangible exactly how we do it. If the board wanted that, we could look at that. But the reality is that frankly, it's more like we scholarship left and right in an amazing way.
But is it fair to say, just to follow up with the chairman's question, that there will be a scholarship program offered for the Serval facility, and the funding and how that works will be similar to your other facilities? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd like to see information about how these scholarships work. And listen, quite frankly, I'm not concerned about the public official's child. I'm concerned about the indigent child of Sayreville, or the individual who may not have insurance, be it a child or an adult who happens to live in Sayreville. That's
Okay.
really what I think.
Or if I may, and I'm not saying this is true, but if the mayor's son, who wrote the letter, okay, the letter goes out the window, doesn't it?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm not saying that was his son. I have no idea.
No, I can tell you it wasn't. It wasn't.
So-
the
so
mayor.
I guess-
I can't tell you which public official it was.
So Mr. Himmelman, I think maybe we would like to see some information, detailed information as to how this scholarship situation would work.
Sure.
All right?
Yeah.
Mr.
I'll
Chairman, I
work
have
with
one
I'll work with finance to get that together, because they know more than me exactly who they scholarship when.
Mr. Esposito?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question.
Thank you, sir.
So you learned from the person's death in Boston, or Massachusetts, I don't know where it was, that no longer are you allowed phones or internet service. But with all the cameras and all the security, even with internet service, how did he get drugs into that facility? Assuming he did.
It pains me to say this. We've looked every way from Sunday. We don't know. We've looked at all the video, we've looked at multiple things. We search every package that gets delivered. When visitors come, we search their bags. The reality is that 100% of the time, I wish we could catch it 100% of the time.
Where there's a will, there's a way, in a sense? If they
Excuse
want
me?
it, where there's a will, there's a way, if they want it bad
Yeah,
enough,
but,
they'll
and it
find
has to be an incredibly strong will. I mean, remember too, this is kind of a disorder characterized by impulsive thinking and a drive to get the drug. Again, if there are other things we should be doing, I'd want to know about them and I'd want to do them. But again, we search every bag, we search every visitor, we search every parcel that comes in front of the patient. The patients are not allowed to walk out the door and see somebody and come back in. If their family's visiting, they don't get to go to the car to say goodbye. And sometimes where there's a will, there's a way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
Do your employees get checked when they come in?
Employees get checked. That's a good question. The employees don't get checked every day when they come in. They do get literally tested to make sure that employees are not using. That's a thought. It's a thought. Boy, I'd hate to.
Could an employee have passed him something if he brought it in?
Boy, that's a possibility. You're right about that. I'd hate to imagine it, but
It
we
could
don't.
happen.
You're right that we don't check every employee's bag every time they come in.
Do you drug test the people when they're in there, or is it the presumption is because nothing comes in?
No, we do drug test. We drug test upon them entering the facility. And then we drug test about once a week, or if there's any cause for suspicion. Cause for suspicion for us is even if somebody has to go out and get an EKG at the hospital and come back, we have staff go with them and come back. Anytime anybody leaves the site for a reason, even like that, we test them the minute they come back in. The other tests would be for cause. If we feel their behavior shows something unusual, we will test them there. So we test them during the time they're there. If there's any reason for cause, we test them when they come in, and depending upon what they're using when they come in, sometimes we'll do what's called quantitative testing, because, for example, if somebody tests positive for marijuana, they'll test positive for the next month, but if you do a quantitative, you can see the level of THC going down,
Gotcha.
right? So we don't want to say, hey, you're positive again 2 weeks later, when the level's going down.
So is it possible to say that the person who died, somehow, who knows how he got these drugs, could it have been right after a drug test and between drug tests and the fact that he had something, and perhaps something in his system? He took a lesser amount than he normally would have, so, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how this is scary, how it could happen, and it's got to be an inside job, I would think. I mean, you would think, I mean, I hate to presume, but,
Man,
listen,
that's
people
rough.
are capable of anything, but,
Yeah.
how does it happen? If every guest is checked, it's really
Yeah.
scary.
My first thought was that he had it mailed, but I was reassured that we search everybody's mail.
Are you random tests? These tests are unannounced?
They're unannounced, yeah. The reason we don't test them on a real regular basis, I don't know if you've been seeing this in the news, there's a really significant problem in our industry right now with the Affordable Care Act, when it was passed, had basically a loophole in it, and that it allowed for drug treatment programs to test people for drugs and alcohol like 3 and 4 times a week at $1,000 a pop, and the loophole basically meant that they got paid for that each time, even when there was no reason to do it, and treatment programs, unethical treatment programs, are making 25–30% of their profit is on urine drug screens, and then the people go home, and if their insurance doesn't cover it, they could have a $100,000 bill for just lab tests. So we don't want to unnecessarily test, and when we do test, we do it basically at cost. In fact, we don't bill separately for tests at all, it's built in, but we do it when they come, we do it to look at levels going down, we do it for any possible cause suspicion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chairman, I have a question.
So-
So you check everything coming in, and this pertains to what's going to be happening that might affect the area. How often do you find somebody trying to sneak something in? Because if they're trying to sneak it in, then it's passing through our community. That's why I'm concerned.
Yeah. I'm not aware of us finding anything. Very rare. Yeah. It's amazing, though, what people will do. This is not with RCA, but at another job, another place. We had a patient's mom who was a doctor. smuggling opiate pills in a Bible to her son in treatment because she said we weren't treating his pain well enough. I mean, it is just, this was not RCA, it was another site. It is amazing what people do. So again, we do leaf through books when somebody mails them books, you know. We check pockets of everything and the hems of everything. When they first come in, we actually do a full body search. And I mean a full body search. Because we cannot afford to have drugs being brought in the community. We had no evidence whatsoever with this patient that any other patient in the site used any drugs. And typically what we'll do is we will test anybody they hung around with, their roommate, anybody else. Nobody else tested positive.
I have one
Sir.
question.
Yeah.
In the Danvers facility.
Yes.
We mentioned part of the problem was the staff that was acquired with the facility.
Yes.
Can you give us some idea how you will acquire staff in the Sayreville site, how you will train the staff?
Sure, absolutely. It's actually quite amazing, the efforts we go to. So we have a site in Billingsley that's opening in April. Tomorrow is a job fair in Billingsley for a site that's scheduled to open in April. So we have job fairs typically off-site at a hotel. We actually had 500 people respond to the ad that went out about the job fair and on a computer program say that they're showing up, give us their name and their resume. So they're expecting 500 people tomorrow. We go through, everybody interviews with somebody who's a specialist, so a driver interviews with one of our drivers, a clinical interviews with clinical. We do those job interviews, we call references, and then as for training when they come in, there is about a month's worth of training. And it ranges from anything from, obviously the driver's training is very different from the clinician's training. But to speak from the clinical aspect, we train them in assessment, we train them in motivational interviewing and a number of different other evidence-based practices. We're training them much better now on how to enter notes and what kind of notes to do and the electronic health record. So they get trained on everything from X to A to Z. We have a staff of 18 full-time master's level trainers, and all they do is go to the sites as they open and train, and go back to the sites. Yeah.
Background checks on those people that apply, or?
We do a background check, yes. Yeah, and I believe we do a urine drug screen on everybody that applies.
And what period of time? I mean, how long does it take to get up and running?
At a site. The ramp up is typically when we open, we're looking to ramp up maybe 8 new patients a week. So, and sometimes we hit that, actually I think almost every time we've hit it, up to a certain point. And when we get to a certain point, we stay kind of stable at that point for a while, make sure everything's ironed out the way that we want. But the ramp up is about 8 per week.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for situations where you need to seek care at a local hospital or whatever, do you have meetings with the hospitals?
We do. We go proactively before we open, and we meet with the nearby hospitals. We have a patient advocate teams in every area. In fact, I was talking to somebody, and the patient advocate in this area was sending us about 12 to 15 people a month to our Lighthouse site. That person here, wherever they are, they're also responsible for reaching out to mothers groups or parents groups, but also to law enforcement, to prevention programs, to the hospitals, and making sure that we have a really quick line of transportation if the person becomes acutely psych or medically in need of additional treatment.
So I had a conversation with a doctor who's connected with a number of hospitals in the area who expressed concerns about their ability to deal with this kind of situation.
I'm just looking for something I know I have here. So New Jersey had an 893% increase in fentanyl deaths last year alone. And let me just see if I can find this. You are number 6 in the country for the amount of overdose visits in the ER. So what I'd like to hope is that we can decrease those overdoses in the long run, and that it will be a benefit to them, because you're not the biggest state, but per 100,000 people, you're number 6 in the country for overdose visits in the ER. Your ERs are getting really slaughtered.
I guess the concern was with the staff the hospital has now. There was some concern about being able to deal with a number of patients that would be might potentially be transferred to their facility, and to deal with that within their facility.
All right. Well, some of the things that we'll do, and again, I mean, these are people that by and large live in Middlesex County, so they're going to your ERs anyway. One of the things I'm really adamant about at our sites is that we have full medical presence, that we have psychiatry and medicine, so that we, and that we have RNs on staff. We always have multiple teams of nurses, but the states don't require us to have RNs 24/7. I require us to have RNs 24/7, so that if somebody has a diabetic, episode or something that we can take care of at our site, we can alleviate that kind of an ER visit. I don't think that you're going to have more overdoses because of treatment programs here than you did before the treatment program was here.
You mentioned moving someone from this area to a facility that you have was like two and a half hours.
Mays Landing.
Yeah. Would you be doing the same thing with potential patients or patients from other?
Yeah, let me say, we are, and we pride ourselves on, and we are profoundly committed to the neighborhood model. That's why we do have the advocates in the neighborhood making liaisons with the hospitals, with the the police chief, with the whoever else we can do that with. So we plan to get most people with 5,700 admissions last year. We think we got enough people right here. And in fact, we have interventionists tonight while we're here that are just a few blocks away doing an intervention on a patient. And we will take that patient to Lighthouse because we don't have anything here yet. So the reason that we're taking people from here out to Lighthouse is because we don't have anything here. My expectation is, again, we really pride ourselves on being a local place, because that's what is kind of a backbone of our clinical care, which is this. If you can get detox and residential treatment and outpatient treatment and go to NA and AA, and your parents or your family can get family therapy or even just education, and we can have spiritual services for recovering people all in one place, that's when people get well.
Mr. Chairman, just one other question. In terms of the nursing, the RN that's on staff, are you saying that you'll have an RN on site, not on staff, on site 24/7?
That's my mandate, yes.
Okay. And how about...
Now, by the way, that's not all we'll have.
No, I understand
Okay,
that.
okay, I
That was
just
my
wanna make
next
sure.
question. Who is going to be on site 24/7?
Generally, like the David Georgeshaw who was up here, he is on site a massive number of hours, as well as his clinical director. When they're not there, there's a key person in charge. You can ask him, but I'm going to tell you he probably gets called in the middle of the night, or he gets called at different times. One of the issues we had with the Westminster site was that the staff there that we inherited didn't believe in doing admissions 24/7, and they had a real problem with that, and they really rebelled against it. And the reality is you have like this much time when somebody's ready to go into treatment to get them in treatment. So we do admissions 24/7. So admissions staff are there, nursing is there 24/7. There's always somebody identified as the key person who is a high-level person, and the sorry to say, but our CEOs and our clinical directors are on call all the time.
All right. What about physicians?
There's not a physician there 24/7. There is full-time physicians. There are nurse practitioners. There are RNs, but they are also on call.
All right. So let's go back to the physicians. So the physicians are not 24/7, which...
No.
All right. But how many hours a day will a physician generally be there?
I'm thinking back to my scheduling. So here's what our staffing ratio is. In a site about the size of Sayreville, we would have a full-time medical director. In our staffing, we have a full-time psychiatrist, and we have I think 1 or 2 psychiatric nurse practitioners and 1 or 2 medical nurse practitioners. So those are the medical staff above and beyond the RN level nurse.
Right, so those professionals would be there during the daytime hours?
Not all during the day. That's why we separate that out. So typically, and again, it would be based on what the experience is, but the experience is that we don't need as much medical between midnight and 8 a.m. Typically, the medical director is there from 7:30 till about 5. Typically, one or two of the nurse practitioners are there between maybe 3 and midnight, and then one of them is there on the weekend.
All right.
And that's, frankly, that's higher
No,
in terms
I
of...
understand.
Okay.
Ms. Tillman, I think what I'd like to also see, and I'm sure the board would probably like to see it as well, is there was some ambiguity with the testimony previous, and I'm not blaming any of your witnesses, but I want to pin down what the staffing, the minimum staffing on this site will be 24/7. You know,
We'll get that
and
to you.
want to break it down from however you break down your shifts, if it's from 7 till 4,
Right.
4 till midnight, midnight till 7. I think we need to know that.
That's fine, I think we can get you that tonight.
All right, well, that's fine.
Possible.
Also, I just wanted to add, I'm sorry, Mr. Sachs, did you have any more questions?
No,
of Dr.
no,
Reese?
I'm good.
Mr. Chairman, or any of the board members have any questions?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Your facility would treat 21 days, correct, inpatient?
Well, what we're trying to do is be a 30-day program because we don't think 21 is enough, but the reality is that we have to fight insurance for every single day. So in terms of residential care, we're shooting for a 30-day program.
Okay, but presently it's 21.
Presently, depending upon which site, it's between 15 and 21.
Okay. Now, you get a person who comes in for 15 to 21
Yes.
and relapses. Now, when that person relapses and he's brought back in, is the treatment almost identical to the primary treatment that he had when he first came there?
Right, it's a good question. So the residential part of care is really to stabilize somebody and get them ready for the next level of care. So what we typically see with relapsers, and about, I would say, if you look nationally, only about 35% of people who go for treatment are going for the first time. That's a national figure, right? So the reality is that the people who relapse right after residential care are people who don't go to outpatient. So we would try and do things differently with that patient. They would be in some different groups, but the more of the emphasis would be on making absolutely sure that patient is bought into, has met their outpatient therapist, and is committed to continuing an outpatient. Now, the other piece would be that if we feel somebody needs a residential level of care of 90 or 120 days, we would refer them to a place that specializes in that.
Okay. Doctor, are you in charge of Mays Landing?
No, I'm not. I'm globally across the board.
You're in charge of all of them. So you'll have a lot to say in Serval? If it was
I like to think
approved?
so. Yeah.
We hope so.
Now, you testified the last time you were here that methadone would not be used. Am I correct?
What I testified was that this is not a methadone clinic. People are not going to come every day to get methadone. I did say, too, though, that we use methadone in detoxing people. There's some people that are addicted to methadone, and that's the right medication for them for a period of 5 days or so to detox them off of methadone. But this is not a place where people will come back to get methadone every day. It's not a methadone clinic.
Okay. There's also a drug I want to ask you about. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correct. I'll spell it. S-U-B...
Suboxone?
Yes.
Okay. So
Use that?
Yes, we do use that for detoxing also. So Suboxone, whereas methadone is a complete agonist, Suboxone is a partial agonist, partial antagonist. It is widely replacing methadone in the field, although there's still a few detoxing patients who do better with the methadone. But the Suboxone, the beauty of Suboxone is that it is it's got both naloxone and Subutex in it, which means that if you try and crush it and inject it, the naloxone, which is actually an opiate blocker, that's when that becomes, it's inert unless you try and mess with the pill, and then it becomes active and it blocks your body from getting any of the opiate. So we use Suboxone to detox people and put them in decreasing doses.
So you will use those drugs in your outpatient?
No, I'm just
in
talking
your
just inpatient, just for detox purposes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Board have any other questions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
During the treatment, do the patients ever, do you ever take them outside? Do they ever walk around the grounds just to get some air, or are they really relegated in the, to the building?
They go outside, but they don't go outside without a staff member that's responsible for them. And they don't go outside like 50 patients and one staff. It's a much higher ratio than that. So it's not uncommon that they might have a softball game, and 10 of them will be out there with 2 staff playing softball. There's in our Earlville site in Maryland, it's right on a hiking trail, and there's an adventure therapist that will take 6 people out for a hike. So they do get outside, but they don't. And then also, we do allow people to smoke. We have a designated smoking area outside. There's always a staff with them. But so they get out, but in a very controlled way.
I'd like to piggyback off of what Mr. Esposito was talking about with respect to how the drugs were getting into that other facility with those 2 deaths. If they're allowed outside, you're saying you only have a couple of monitors that are...
No, what I'm saying is that we're not sending 50 patients outside without, that's just unheard of.
Is there a one-to-one, or do you have a group, and there's only... What I'm saying is...
I know.
Can someone
Yeah.
leave drugs outside? They go outside, pick them up. Are they searched when they go back in?
They're not searched when they go back in because the staff is with them all the time. And so, for example, they might walk them to the volleyball court, play volleyball, and go. Now, if they had somebody come and plant drugs there, they'd have to be able to pick them up without us seeing them do that. And the other piece of it is, too, people don't go outside and play volleyball. In fact, the state won't allow it if they're still in detox. So by the time they go out at all for a walk with staff or for a volleyball game, they're already well into treatment, and we feel like they're less of a risk. If you asked me to promise you it could never happen, I couldn't do that, at 100%, with you. But I can tell you 100%, somebody will be with them and will be on top of them, not with them like watching them over there, with them like the way I'm with this group of you right now.
I mean, the facility isn't fenced in, so someone actually could walk onto the property and potentially do that.
It's possible, but I will tell you, we have people walking on the perimeter of the property. We have, again, it's not every second, every minute, in every square inch, but we have people outside walking and monitoring the property. Everybody stops anybody who's on the property that they don't know why they're on there. Even our construction guys are just harassed because everybody doesn't know who all the different construction folks are that work for the company. So, could somebody do it? Yeah, but we do have monitors that walk the grounds that look for that kind of stuff. We have, and any staff that sees somebody will say something.
I know we mentioned this at the last meeting, if you could just refresh it. As far as people are there, it's their choice to be there. They're not forced to be there. So if they get, say, halfway through the program, they just want to call it quits, they can literally get their clothes and leave. What's the process of you notify the police department? What was the process of someone just walking out the door, walking down the street?
Right, so I'll go over this again. If somebody wants to leave before their treatment is done, we have a step process of literally 6 or 8 things that happen before they can leave. And it ends with, you can only leave by being picked up by a family member we know and we walk you to the car, or our car will take you somewhere. It starts with, we have a team of staff that will try and do what's called AMA blocking. AMA is leaving against medical advice. They will try an AMA block. So they will get with the person, talk to them about why. They have releases. They'll call their parents or their spouse and say they want to go home. Why don't you talk to them? They get all different staff involved. Then they get patients involved. There's a group of patients that are kind of high on the ladder of the patients that are getting ready to leave, that are doing really well. They'll try and block it. If they still want to go, again, it's not a lockdown facility, but again, we have their keys, we have their wallet, we have their iPhone. We have, if they brought a laptop in, which they shouldn't, we have that, and we have to sign that out. They have to fill out the satisfaction survey. They have to sign something that says they're leaving AMA. If they're on any medications, which many of them are on different medications like heart medications or whatnot, we have to get the doctor to get the scripts so that they have that medication for the next 2 weeks while they're out in the field. So it's not a matter of just deciding they want to go and walking out the door. If they did do that, we would alert authorities. But again, it means that pretty much a middle-class person is left without their keys, their wallet, their cell phone, and whatnot.
But if they wanted to leave, they could just walk. There's nothing stopping them from just walking.
By law, we're not allowed to pin them down and stop them.
Why would you call the authorities? Mr.
Yeah.
Emmer mentioned it, but you don't have to call the police. They're not, you're making the assumption perhaps that someone is a criminal. We've already indicated that this will not accept any referrals. So if somebody wants to leave, and they want to leave on their own volition, and you've gone through the whole procedure, they can leave.
They can leave. We don't call the police
You
because
don't,
they're...
yeah, and I would suggest you
I
don't
know.
call the police, because that would be an invasion of privacy of that individual to call the police and say, oh, by the way, Joe Smith, who has a drug problem, is leaving here. That's not a police matter, and nor should it be. But
I will tell you that there could be a case where we feel that this is some kind of a danger.
that I understand.
And,
That I
and we
understand.
call because at the point at which they're not our patient and they're on our property, even if they're walking off, they're trespassing.
All right, well,
And
that's
that's
a
how we
different
get
story.
to
Okay,
that.
I
And now
understand.
what happens if Joe Smith walks out of their facility and just walks, what is it, 200 feet down Earnston Road, and then they're out to school?
Well, again, we're taking a big leap,
Right.
that somebody who in this facility is a criminal, which obviously they're not. We cannot, because we've
I'm
already.
not saying they're a criminal,
Yeah,
but they have some issues.
They have some
Now-
issues.
Now they wander on the
Just like
school
anybody else
property.
might have issues,
Sure.
but, all right, but I want to understand, and again, it's not incumbent upon this board to require that when someone leaves, we contact
I
the
understand
police.
that.
This is a voluntary facility.
Yes.
It would be like if somebody
I-
left a nursing home facility against medical advice. Would we call the police? Probably not, unless they were an Alzheimer's patient, and perhaps we were concerned about their safety. But that's, all right.
Correct, and Mr. Sachs, just to follow up with that, it's like any other business. If somebody were trespassing or they feared for their safety, we call the police, but as a normal protocol, no. Correct, Dr. Breeze, is that fair to say?
As a normal protocol, no. But I just want you to stop for 1 second. If this was your daughter or this was your son in treatment and they decided to leave and we did everything we could to get them to stay, do you think that they're a danger to the community? I mean, half the people here with me tonight are in long-term recovery, including myself. These are your neighbors' kids. These are your, colleagues. These are not people that were bussing in from Camden.
Thank you, Doctor.
One question, quick.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any facilities by schools right now?
We have one that's close to a college. Let me just think real quick. No. Devon is close to a school. I apologize that I don't know off the top of my head. Close to a middle school, yeah, in Devon. Yeah.
You could see
I can find out.
You could see the concern. I mean,
I
you
can
spoke to our Board
understand
of
that-
Ed also. I don't know if you were present. I know you were.
Yes.
I mean, we're dealing with kindergarten kids and preschoolers, so you could understand the community's concern here, obviously, and the boards for that matter. You know, it's not the
Yeah.
number
I
overwhelming
did
issue,
check.
but it is a concern.
Yeah, and I don't blame you for the concern. I checked with 2 out of my 5 sites today. I got word back from them. I was checking a lot of data. They've never had a single person walk out. I didn't get back from the other 3 sites. I would tell you if they did. I really would. I understand the concern and asked and answered, I guess.
I'm thinking, if the board were to act favorably on this application, one of the possible conditions could be that, in terms of your operations, nobody leaves the site unless they are brought into a motor vehicle, and escorted in a motor vehicle off of this site.
That's what we do.
You could force that.
That could be a condition of any approval.
If someone didn't want to get into that vehicle and just walk, you can stop them from walking?
What we're going to say is that, first of all, that would have to be their procedure, but we could make that a condition of any approval as well.
You do that now, but it could be a friend. I think what.
No, we let if they're leaving what's called AMA, we let them, again, we go through all kinds of different checks and balances. It takes about 4 or 5 hours to leave AMA. It's not like they tell us at noon and they're gone at 12:15. So at that point, and when we only release them to, usually it's a parent, frankly, the car to drive home of somebody that's been involved in treatment with them, like a
Understood.
parent,
Okay.
or our car will take them
Gotcha.
home.
Okay.
Mr. Sachs, just thought that was an excellent suggestion on your recommendation on if a patient is going to be voluntarily leaving, and they go through all the screening process and they're checked out. We have no issue with the condition being implemented, that they would have to be escorted into a motor vehicle, which, by the way, is a very similar condition that was imposed by RCA, to RCA on another application in another jurisdiction. Exactly what you're recommending. And there's been no issue, you know, I can have the client testify, but.
I have one more question, Doctor. Hopefully this is the last question.
That'd be great.
A person gets admitted to your facility and goes through the 21 days.
Yes.
And let's say that the recommendation after the 21 days is the outpatient,
Yes.
and that goes to the 30-day period. So we're talking 21 days admitted plus the outpatient to come up to 1 month. I'm not sure you can answer this, but what's the average cost for a 30-day treatment in your facility?
Now, I know that the newspaper quoted $24,000 for a month. That's just not true for our cost. It would depend on which site, and it would depend on, I'll give you an example. If we're in network with Blue Cross of New Jersey or Horizon or whatever, and our network rate is $550 a day, that's what they agree to pay us. That's what we've agreed to accept. So it would be that times 21 days, and then the outpatient, which I really hope will last longer than 1 week, maybe anywhere from once a week to 3 times a week to 5 days a week. So there's different levels of outpatient. So that would be additional cost, but obviously much less than the day rate.
Any other questions of the board?
Yeah, I do. I have one.
It's okay, thank you.
One more. You know, we mentioned it the last time you were here, but can you go over the criteria of what you determine as a successful patient or a successful outcome? Kind of vague at the last time that you were here. You couldn't like pin like what your success rate is.
Yeah.
I mean, can you give us a little bit more for just the recovery,
Yeah.
for inpatient?
See, yeah. The thing about this field is that you got to go back to how it developed. It's a paraprofessional field. It was. One addict helping another, getting people sober, right? And so the goal was always 100% abstinence. So the field started measuring itself with that. As the field became more professionalized, and as we got covered by the Affordable Care Act as one of the 10 essential benefits that insurers had to cover it, and as we started getting paid more by insurance, the field has had to really change and to really deliver care, document care, and the field wants to get paid for like a regular medical field, right? You know, and all that came around the same time as we showed the genes that the addiction gene was located on and other things. So the reality is, because of those transitions, the field's never had a gold standard. If you ask me personally, from my professional career as an NIH researcher for 18 years, the number one goal of residential, there's 2 goals in residential. They're equally important. One is to stabilize the patient, stabilize medical, psychiatric, family problems, stabilize the patient. The second goal of residential treatment, equally as important, is get them involved in outpatient treatment. Because when somebody goes, particularly if they go to just detox and leave, that's an incredibly high-risk time for that person to overdose and die, because they no longer have the drugs in their system. If they go back out and use again, that's when most people die. There's 2 times that people are very high risk for death. One is upon discharge from jail, and the other is upon discharge from detox, okay? So my goal, the first goal I would look at is, did they transition to outpatient care? And the way the government, the feds would define that would be, or the NIH would be, attending at least 3 sessions. The goal I would have for somebody, that a lot of the research centers around 90 days. It seems that if you can get somebody to commit to something and do it on a regular basis for 90 days, they have a really greatly increased chance of sticking with that, whether it's frankly a diet or quitting drugs or exercising. There's a 90-day kind of piece. If I can get somebody to stay in some kind of treatment, even if it's just outpatient once a week, for longer than that time period, that's my next goal.
So you're saying that the high risk for a patient is right after they finish their inpatient and that transition to outpatient. So do you keep any type of records? Do you know what your success rate is for that?
Absolutely. We keep both records, and we really push to get people to transition to the next level of care with us so that it's an easier transition. We try and drive them there to meet their therapist so that they go. I can tell you the national statistics are that 50% of outpatient first visits don't show up. and 50% of those who show up the first time don't show up a second time. So what we do to try and alleviate that is to go and introduce them to the outpatient therapist. I even designed my outpatients to use the same furniture, the same kind of tones and colors so that they feel like they're kind of coming home, you know? What we do is we set up a campus where we also have detoxed inpatient and outpatient. And then as we grow in that community, we see where the folks are coming from, and we site satellite outpatients around. So because we're kind of new, we don't have as much of that. But in New Jersey, so we have outpatient at the Mays Landing site. We also have it in Manahawkin, I believe, Cherry Hill, and Voorhees. And so we try and get them into that site. We have, I think, about 26% of people stay at Mays Landing to do their outpatient there. Another, I think, 25 or so % connect with other outpatient, and we're still working to get that number higher and higher. The biggest risk is when they're right out of detox, but it's also out of residential.
So I guess what I'm getting at is I'm trying to quantify what success is. Like, how do you gauge success to know that your program is effective? Maybe you can do something different. Like, how do you weigh that?
What we can do, again, since there's no gold standard, and since treatment...
What do you guys use as a standard?
What we use is length of time in treatment. We use satisfaction ratings, which is something we get now on a random and regular basis. We use transitions to outpatient. We use type of discharge. We call people up for the first 4 weeks after they've gone and ask them a bunch of questions. And we're just putting together, a calling center that will call people for up to a year. And while I do say that the goal is abstinence from drugs and alcohol, I also want to, for the community and for, everybody's different, has a different goal. So your police system want to know that they haven't been arrested. Their insurance wants to know that they haven't been in and out of the ER, because substance abusers take 11 times the amount of ER or medical treatment costs as a non-substance abuser. So I also want to look at things that the community values, because frankly the community doesn't really always care if they don't have a drink for a year and they get their birthday cake at an AA meeting. So.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you so much.
To address your questions and Mr. Sachs' questions, I'd like to call David Dorshow, who will address the scholarship issue and also the staffing. If you recall, he operates one of the RCA facilities in South Jersey. We could address that, and pretty much he's going to explain how that works there, and be very similar here. And I'll let David explain that.
You're still under oath, sir.
You're still under oath. Just for the record, just state your name, spelling it, please.
No, he's okay, he's all right.
Yeah, but
We swore him in already.
nothing for the report. I want to make sure.
Didn't I swear him in already? Yes, he's still under oath.
You have her name? You have his name at all? Okay, great.
Yeah, just,
Okay,
his
David.
name is
Sorry.
fine.
Great, terrific. All right, so David, if you would just explain how the scholarship program works at your facility, and also the staffing
Sure.
requirements to address Mr. Sachs' questions about the staggering of shifts, and would that apply to the Cerebral facility?
Yes. First of all, when it comes to scholarships, Dr. Crease made a statement I think is really important to repeat. And that statement is that Recovery Centers of America scholarships more clients than personally any organization I've ever been involved with. So I've been in the substance abuse treatment field for over 22 years postgraduate, and I can tell you that we frequently do scholarship people. Okay, how do those scholarships come about? Our business development folks make me aware of someone who's in need. And then what the process is that I will then take that to my corporate office, to the corporate finance office, with a plan for that patient as to how many days I'm requesting that scholarship, and then what's the plan once they leave. Do they have stable housing? Can we get them into outpatient, that type of thing. I can tell you that 75% of my scholarship requests are approved, and I'm very proud to say that. So there's not necessarily a scholarship fund per se, but that's the process that is followed when it comes to scholarships. Does that satisfy your?
No,
if I could- okay,
not really, no.
All right, so
Okay.
if you could address for the board and for the public. So you mentioned that 75% of the requests are approved for scholarship requests, correct? Okay. Can you quantify that, and you can also explain how that process works?
It probably equates to about 2 clients per month that we are approving scholarships for. probably about 20 to 25 days total of scholarship per month of what we refer to as patient days.
Per facility?
I'm sorry?
Is it per facility?
I
or
can
just
only,
per-
I can only speak to my facility,
So you-
which is in Mays Landing. I can't speak to the other facilities.
So-
And in Mays Landing, since you've been there,
Mhm.
can you give us a sense of the dollars that have been awarded scholarships and for what period of time? Just broadly, if you can.
20 times 700. Probably about, an average of probably about $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month. That's off the top of my head.
And for how long is that, since the facility's been operational?
Well, since I've been CEO, which is 16 months, which is since August of 2016.
And so what you're saying is at Mays Landing, your average is about two clients per month are there on scholarship. All right, so that's 24 scholarships a year?
Approximately.
All right, and it's for 20 to 25 days?
Between the two clients,
Okay.
yes.
All right,
So in other words, number of patient days.
all
would
right.
be
And
between
so-
20
But what
25
happens
months.
after the scholarship money? Well, the program I know runs longer than 20 days in some circumstances, right? 21 days?
Yes, so
All right.
then what we're doing is we are trying to arrange for them, if they have housing needs, to attempt to get them into sober housing, to utilize community supports for that, contacts that we have within the sober living community.
So you're having them removed from the site, is what you're saying?
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, now, I'm sorry, do you have any other questions?
You're a private company, so I'm not going to ask you your cost per patient, okay? That's your business, although I'd like to know it. So scholarship in a traditional sense is you have an endowment, and you take from that endowment and you put towards it. But it doesn't really cost you much to have a patient. And if you have 130 patients and 5 are on scholarship, quote unquote scholarship, it doesn't really cost you anything. Or do you build charitable, I don't even know if there's charitable organizations out there that fund those scholarships. So it's just you saying, you know what, here's a bed. We're not going to bill for that bed. So that's your kind of your scholarship. It's kind of just a charity that you're providing.
The costs
community?
associated with scholarshiping a client include feeding that client, include medication, if they require medication, because there's no insurance to help pay for that medication. Staffing, obviously, but also, I run in Mays Landing at or near capacity. So if someone's in that scholarship bed, then it could mean that, someone else isn't. So
Absolutely. Oh,
there is a
I
cost
agree.
involved.
Okay.
Yes, and is someone else underwriting that? No.
So if I may ask, if it were my company, I don't know if I'd be so charitable. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. Why are you?
Because people are dying. And I don't mean to sound overly dramatic, but that's the case. It is my personal approach to any scholarship request that I receive as CEO of Mays Landing Lighthouse, that I never say no. Now, I don't have final decision-making authority, but my practice is I never say no, and I always make that request then to our corporate office. That's my protocol I have to follow.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question for clarification. You had indicated that it costs about $2,500 for these 25 days for the scholarship fund. The doctor before said it costs about $500 a day, so I was wondering how you came up with that number.
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
The doctor said it costs $500 a day for a,
I think she was using the example of a reimbursement that we receive from an insurance company.
right.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering how you come up with $2,500 as for
I think
25
there was
days.
an error. My understanding, let me ask this question, is do you want to sort of correct your testimony on the $2,500? Do you want to elaborate on that? So we're clear, maybe you.
So I'm not clear of the question, though.
Well, first, let's find out or we can have Dr. Parisi come up and address that question.
Yeah.
Danny, why don't you come up? Yeah, it was just, I think it was a math error. So we
I
just
honestly
need
think
to
it's a math error. What does it cost per day to treat a patient about? What do we get from insurance to your patient?
Well, it costs, we receive from insurance, and an average is about $725 a day.
So that's what we receive insurance as our average between detox and residential. And you would multiply that times 25 days.
Correct. That's correct.
You're way off on the number.
Sorry about that.
He's not a math major. Does that clarify that?
Yes, it does. I was
Thank
just
you.
curious.
I thought the same thing, actually. I was going to follow up that. Any other questions on the scholarship program? But, okay. David, if you would address the other issue regarding the staffing, how that works at your facility, and would it work similar to Sayreville? And if you could describe who's on site, 24/7, and what the shifts are, and the personnel, et cetera.
Yeah, I'd like to give an example of right now. It is about 10 minutes of 9 on Wednesday evening, so this is our second shift, okay? Currently, I have 45 clients in my Mays Landing site. And for those 45 clients, I have 5 nurses on. I have 6 what we refer to as recovery support specialists. I have 2 admissions staff members. I have 1 what we call grounds monitor, which is checking the grounds and that type of thing for security reasons. And I have a receptionist and a housekeeper. So that's how many staff members I have on right now. During our first shift, obviously, those numbers are higher for those same 45 clients.
So what are the shift hours?
It depends on the department. As an example, the nursing shift is a 12-hour shift, 7A to 7:30 or 7P to 7:30 So they're working 12-hour shifts. When it comes to the recovery support specialist staff, that is 7 to 3, 3 to 11 p.m., 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And the recovery specialists encompasses what?
They are essentially, you might think of them as techs. They're there to work with the clients, make sure the clients are where they're supposed to be. They run groups, they do lectures, that type of thing.
Okay, so we have the registered nurses, and we have the recovery systems.
I want to be clear on that, though, just for clarity's sake. We always have, and Dr. Kreese mentioned this, 1 RN that is physically in the building 24/7. We also have a minimum of 4 other nurses. Some of those other nurses might be RNs, might be LPNs.
Fair point. And, okay, other staff.
So recovery sports specialists, we have nurses, and this is right now.
Yes.
We also have 2 admissions counselors on. We have someone, as I mentioned, called a grounds monitor that is checking the grounds and doing the security piece of it. We have a receptionist, and we have a housekeeper.
Any medical physicians there 24/7,
We-
or are they doing rounds, or how does that work?
We have medical staff on about, physically in the building, an average of about 10 hours a day, and when they are not physically in the building, they are on call. So there's always medical personnel that are at a minimum available on call.
But they're during the working day as well?
Yes.
Any other staff that you didn't cover?
For this point in time, no. For a second shift now.
And is it your understanding that there would be a similar staff arrangement and shifts for the Sayreville facility?
Well, yes, taking into consideration that I have currently 45 clients or a total bed capacity of 53, Sayreville will be more than twice as large as that.
But on a proportional basis?
Right, on a proportional basis.
But the staffing shifts will virtually be the same, right?
Right. Well, Sayreville will be 3 times larger. Okay.
Not a math major.
All right. I preface this as a former prosecutor. Okay? Nothing good ever happens at 2 a.m. Okay, we know that. Nothing good ever happens at 2 in the morning. Tell me, in your Mays Landing staff, in your Mays Landing facility, who's there at 2 a.m. in the morning?
2 o'clock in about 4 or 5 hours. We
2
will
2
have
a.m., just
we
give
will
me-
have 5 nurses on.
You'll still have 5.
We'll still have the 5 nurses.
Yep.
And 1 is an RN out of those 5. A minimum of 1. There could be 2 RNs on tonight.
Is that because it's 12-hour shifts?
It's 12-hour shifts.
Yep.
Okay. We will have 2 RSS staff on. And at that time, we will have our grounds monitor on as well.
Right, so you won't have the, you won't, in
We
Mays
wouldn't
Lane,
have a receptionist, we
you
wouldn't
lose
have
your
a housekeeper.
receptionist, and you lose some administrative staff. All right, and you lose some of your recovery staff.
Right.
Okay, all right, but you do have the 5 RN, the 5.
5 nurses.
Okay, all right.
How many beds do you have there?
How many beds do we have?
How many can you fill?
53.
53, okay. So if full capacity in Sayreville, you're not gonna triple the staff, that'd be outrageous, but what would it be, double? 1.5? Or more nurses, you don't need more receptionists, obviously, but more nurses?
I couldn't give you an exact number. No, it would not triple.
No.
But perhaps twice as many, or at least 1.5 times as
to
many.
one,
And that's an estimate.
Okay, of course, yeah, thank you.
If I could you explain what the, your grounds monitor does and his job?
Grounds monitor position is there to inspect the clients when they come in, any packages, luggage, that type of thing, when someone is being admitted. They are also constantly checking the grounds, both outside as well as inside the building. They are checking video cameras, that type of thing. It's basically a security position.
Okay, thank you.
And we have grounds monitors 7 days a week.
Are they licensed to carry?
I'm sorry?
Are they licensed to carry a weapon?
No.
How many would be in Sayreville? I mean, one security guard for 135 people seems minimal to me. I don't know, to me. I don't know your business, but.
No, that's one for 53.
So you think he would double?
So it would at least double. Mhm.
You know, I don't want to speculate as to what it's going to be. I'd like to know what it's going to be. So, I'm, you know, if you can provide that information, that's fine. Okay.
That's very good.
Yeah, I don't want it to be, well, it may be, or.
Fair point.
Okay,
Fair point.
all right, fine.
Okay.
Any other
Chairman, any
questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have another question. I'm reading here that you're looking to put a patio behind the building. I don't think this is for you, whoever it is for. You're looking to build a patio back there for the patients. What kind of security measures are you gonna take back there when they spend time back there?
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing. That's what she said.
You can have one of our RCA representatives address that question. I'm sorry, I apologize. Why don't you just state your name?
Sir, yeah, well, first of all, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, and professional affiliation for the record.
Michael DeRosier, DESROSIERS. I'm the Director of Operations at Lighthouse, but I also serve in a lot of different facilities capacities at all of our sites across the board.
And where is Lighthouse?
Lighthouse is in Mays Landing, New Jersey.
Thank you.
So when we have a space such as like a patio, or we have, you know, some outdoor type of events, like Dr. Kreese already spoke about, they're all attended with RSS staff, so on and so forth, and it's proportional to how many staff is out there, to how many patients are out there versus how much staff is out there. So I haven't looked at the plans yet for the patio, but again, that will be first monitored. You guys asked about the grounds monitor, and I would like to expand upon that. This is a person with a background. We either use somebody in the military, or we use somebody who had a lot of treatment experience, or law enforcement, and that's kind of where we're really targeting. People who worked in this treatment space, who really understand what they're looking for, not just the average person to say, hey, we're a security guard and we stood at a bank and so on and so forth. It's more people with treatment type of experience that understand what we do and things that we would be looking for at all times. Because we talked about when they do go out there and they do come in, what would they be looking for, or how do we know that they're not coming back with stuff? These people are trained for that specifically, understanding that a soda can in a yard could mean something, to really turning over every single stone to make sure that's going on. So when we talk about an outside space like a patio or a garden or a hike or a walk, these people, once, like I said, the ratios are strictly followed. So many patients per staff. And then that grounds monitor also will be out there patrolling that area and making sure it's safe.
Okay, but my question is it gonna be fenced in? You know,
So-
if you have one security guard out there with, let's say, 20 people, 25 people, is it possible that somebody could just walk off?
So again, no, because it's not just that one security guard. That security guard is the preventative measure before the patients even get outside. Looking, making sure there's nothing outside and so on and so forth. But the recovery support specialist will be with those patients outside with them at all times.
So the area does not get fenced in?
I can't speak, like I said, I haven't seen the plans to say exactly.
My understanding is the outdoor patio, as presented on the revised site plan, does have a fence
Yeah,
around the
there-
perimeter.
There will be a fence?
My recollection is there was some discussion at the last meeting about fencing, and I see on the revised plans, there is fencing
Mr.
now.
Sachs, that's correct, and I think the chairman
There is.
asked.
Which is a good idea.
My
Yes.
understanding is the chairman had asked that we take a look at that, and we did submit revised plans showing the fence around the perimeter.
Okay,
Good.
that's good.
Does that address your question?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, did you have any other questions? Or anyone else? I'm sorry.
You're talking about the ratio between patient and staff. What is that ratio?
I think it varies from state to state. What's our ratio from, I'm sorry.
If you don't know the answer,
Okay.
I'll have David answer.
Very good.
But you're gonna get me the staffing information, right?
Exactly.
We're gonna come, when you say the staffing information, you mean the number per shift and all that? Well, I think David just testified to that.
No, you're gonna get me something for this site.
Writing.
I don't care about Mays Landing. I wanna know
No,
for
no,
this
no.
site. Yeah.
What I will get you is the staffing per shift and the people we're hiring for this site to
That's what I
staff
wanna
those
know.
shifts. The ratio, though, is 1.4. 1.4 staff to each patient.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. And Mr. Sachs, that would include the grounds monitor. We will also provide that information to you, but my understanding is there will be 2 for this site. Okay, that's fine. Mr. Chairman, I don't think we have any further questions of these witnesses. I would like to proceed, but Mr. Sachs, you may have a question or...
I don't have any questions.
Oh.
Are you okay? You want a break? All right.
We'll take a break.
Take a 5-minute break, Mr. Chairman?
Very good. Thank you.
5-minute break.
Debbie, I'm always looking out for you.
In writing. Yeah. In writing.
No, that's up to them.
You think they're gonna vote tonight? You think they're gonna vote?
I want to see how many of these people want to say something.
Working tonight, John?
No. I've been on Jersey back.
Yeah, you said.
How are you?
Be done by
Nice
today.
to see you. Busy?
Lawyers and defense lawyer.
I'm good, I'm
Son
busy.
is very sick this
That
morning.
was always crazy.
Had to arrange to get his wife back to the house.
Bill here.
We didn't actually start till 1 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
And I have 2 in the week.
Then we got to put on Christmas.
Then I got to finish Christmas and mom here. And I've had my daughter home sick. I was actually happy. I've been home with her for 3 weeks. We had swimming for 3 days. Swimming all day. I'll find out on Monday what they're going to do. She's a teenager.
Yeah, this is the area, this is where the outdoor is.
You'll get that John Cole thing on.
She's a hand. She's a good kid. She's a really good sport. She's fresh. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't not think it's so good. Yeah, we have Verizon. Our TRC today, Verizon wants to go on in January. I know. I know.
books. Actually, I got 3 books. I'm waiting to hear from the other.
Vetting these applications.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking college.
Well, things up there at Zuni. Chair now. I took the chair from out the back. Chevrolet lived there. Daughter was graduated the same year I did, 72. Came up.
No. I don't see that.
Now,
Fountain. And there was a fountain pushed aside.
How things going? Getting ready for Christmas?
haven't done a thing.
That was a wild night around town that night.
I know.
Larry Coakley. Car, his transmission got caught in reverse.
Go on.
Driving around town. Backwards.
Yeah. I haven't done anything.
The funniest story I got about the whole thing. Kid was interested in joining the United States Air Force. Father said, I'll take you down to the recruit station. We'll talk to the guy. They were down there a couple hours. Comes home. Mother said, so you're going to be in the Air Force? He goes, no, but Dad joined up again. He said the benefit was so good. He goes, compared to the deal, he signed right up. This is, what's her name, whatever it was. They used to send Army representatives all around the world.
Oh, I hope not.
Saying you're getting the wrong impression of what we do. Getting the wrong impression of what would happen to you. Signed up. You're automatically assuming you're going to be sent to a combat zone, which is not going to necessarily be the case. We got such wonderful, benefits from Jack McDonald. Yeah, I know, like a free funeral. That's the way.
I think Allison talks faster.
Texas is one of the biggest changes over here. The attitude toward the military. Not an unacceptable thing.
So Allie will do Tuesday. It's a case Henry Ken Smith just in her testimony. It's got a division. It's like Henry should be vanilla. My fiance is turning, stepping down. So we have a
Huh?
he has Afro. Yeah.
I know. And they're probably all going to talk.
Yeah, exactly. It's good. And honestly, like we were both home together.
The mayor.
Thursday, Friday.
Does he show up?
Get out! I was. Get back to the routine. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Basically, a new application. When that goes out this year, if you need it, that's a new application, have a hearing, get people.
Yeah.
do you think of what the Yankees are up to? They got a new pitcher, and now they're talking about power hitting third base back. I remember his name was. And he's going to be a free agent. Yeah. There's another third baseman they're looking at. He's going to be a free agent not next season, but the season after. He says, "You don't want to get nothing." In the sports section, it was saying, in the sports section today, yeah, they were going, Yankees are all of a sudden interested in this guy, and they're saying, "What? That lineup's going to be, you ain't going to need any pitching with this guy." And they got traded to San Diego. That opened up the third base spot. That's why they started investigating if they were going to go after this third base.
They're talking about Frazier, maybe bringing him back.
That's a possibility too.
Saying on the news the other night, they didn't say who he was. They came in the middle of it. They said 79. He was up at 79 million. So I said it must be. It's got to be a base.
Yeah, football players don't get paid that much.
Oh, if we're going to go into the sport.
She knew I was coming, she had to. She saw me on deck and said, forget it.
Had a knee fix. Babe Ruth signed his $85,000 contract. All of a sudden, he's getting paid more than the President of the United States. And so the reporter goes, Mrs. Ruth, can you justify being paid more than the President of the United States? And Ruth goes, sure can. Had a better year than he did.
Okay, how are you? Not at all. Yeah. Yeah. We try. Yeah, we're all, we all do it, yeah.
Let's get this rolling, Chairman. It's over. Nothing to do. That's your bath. Would you pay? How much was your bathroom?
Talking like I lost.
January
I haven't lost, just for good fight. They're saying, what did he mean by that? Are you going to challenge the election? It was close. It was close.
Yeah.
Editorial.
We have a.
End of, straight north.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Jumps on a
it's
missile.
going on 15 minutes.
It had
Get this moving. These
got
people
Trump
wanna
riding the
come
missile.
up. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we stay here till 11, 12 o'clock.
No, 10 o'clock I shut down. I got a stiff neck, I got a temperature.
I took 2 Xanaxes before I came here tonight.
I should have taken, yeah, I took a muscle relaxer.
Yeah, they don't let them hear you. You'll be the first patient.
We'll be the first patients in there.
Where's Larry?
I don't know.
Conversations are hell, Ron.
Well, I can't concede until I get back here.
Call 'em.
Both attorneys are out there.
Go get him.
Hit the booty call, he'll hear it.
I'll go get him.
Trying to push me for a vote tonight. I said it's not happening. Because I'm going to lose the nursing home guys. Guys are well.
He said whenever the next meeting is, so. Well, that's good.
Shift things around. Push the billboard back up.
We're gonna do this.
Temple, we have Gillette, we have People.
The folks are.
Actually, there's another use of the Verizon, and something else.
Massachusetts. I said I want to see a really bad report that you got out of Massachusetts.
That's it? I thought there was another use. Maybe not.
Or if billboards they got up there now?
When you get to Massachusetts, they started at 50%.
Huh? What?
We get the report Massachusetts. They're passing out bulbs.
Should I email it or no? Okay.
Need that report.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Can I call the meeting back to order? Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Here.
Mr. Kreismer? Here. Ms. Cataldo?
Here.
Mr. Corrigan?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Emma?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We have one additional witness this evening, Christine Cofone, who's our additional planner on this application. We'd have to have her sworn in and qualified.
Ms. Cofone, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Christine Ann Nazaro, N-A-Z-Z-A-R-O. Cofone, C-O, F as in Frank, O-N-E. Business address is 125 Half Mile Road, Suite 200, Red Bank, New Jersey. And I am the principal and the owner of the Cofone Consulting Group.
Ms. Cofone, could you just give a brief background of your CV and educational experience, educational background and experience? I know you've testified before numerous planning and zoning boards, but for the record, if you would do that, please.
I have, yes. I've been practicing for about 22 years. I've testified here in Sayreville and before about 385 other planning and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey. So clearly the balance of my practice, or the lion's share of my practice, is really offering testimony before planning and zoning boards. I'm an affordable housing special master working for about 8 different judges in about 25 different municipalities. I'm a planning and zoning instructor for the Rutgers Center for Government Services. I'm a professor, adjunct at Monmouth University. I'm teaching a special topics in real estate course this spring. And in addition to my private work and teaching, I am also a public consultant for the Casino Redevelopment Authority and a number of municipalities throughout the state.
Okay. I want to make a motion that we accept her credentials.
So moved.
Second.
Proceed.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ms. Cofone, now you've had an opportunity to review this application in some detail, correct?
I have.
Okay, and you were here at the last hearing when Mr. Higgins was testifying on the planning and zoning related issues. Is that my understanding?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Now, and you've reviewed this matter, and could you just briefly discuss why you believe this particular application is inherently beneficial and discuss your other planning opinions?
Sure. The concept of inherently beneficial uses is to deal with those uses. It's a judicially created term, meaning it's not something that's defined in your land use ordinance. It's not a permitted use. Inherently beneficial uses are those uses that are created based on
She's got to talk into it.
Is that better? Oh, there we go. Okay, great. Okay, so what I was saying was what's an inherently beneficial use? And I know Mr. Higgins testified last month, Mr. Leon Cavallo also spoke last month, that they both were in agreement that the proposed use is an inherently beneficial use. And under the law, they're judicially created to deal with those uses, to deal with a relatively narrow range of enterprises, so universally considered to be of community value that municipalities should be favorably disposed towards their inclusion. And they're generally institutional in nature. Right now, in the current climate that we live in, as a land use professional who've testified on hundreds of applications, inherently beneficial and otherwise, I can't think of a more inherently beneficial use in this current climate than the proposed recovery center that's being proposed here this evening. Further, there have been decisions in New Jersey that have rendered these type of facilities as inherently beneficial. Judge Jacobson, who is the assignment judge in Mercer County, overturned a decision in Lawrence Township where a detox center was denied by the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and then that was subsequently overturned by Judge Jacobson, and in her decision, she found that that recovery, that detox center, was in fact an inherently beneficial use. I found that the testimony and the information that Dr. Carice provided to this board to be staggering as to the benefits and the need for these type of facilities in the state. The Federal Fair Housing Act, this is a protected class. The persons who are going to be occupying this facility or have a disability. The Federal Fair Housing Act considers discrimination a refusal to make reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities. In Sayreville, there is no zone where we can go and seek and say, well, we might not be permitted here in the prime zone, but elsewhere we would be permitted. Based on my review of your zoning ordinance, there is no alternative for us to go to another site and be treated as a permitted use. So in the instance use, we have a situation where we're asking you for the permission to use the facility here. I did not attend the interpretation hearing on this phase, or that phase of the applications, or the progressing of this application, but in so doing, I did have an opportunity to look at the definition of long-term care facility. And whether we're an inherently beneficial use or not, certainly that makes sure that we presumptively satisfy the positive criteria. We don't have to satisfy particular suitability because we're an inherently beneficial use, but we still have to talk to you a little bit about the negative criteria. The negative criteria does not ask you as a board to hold this or any other applicant that there be no detriment at all, just that the benefits of the grant of the deviation outweigh any detriment. So when you look at the long-term care facility definition, and I understand the zoning board has already determined we're not a long-term care facility, we're here asking for the relief, but the impacts of that are very similar. So when you talk about an impairment of Sayreville's zone plan, you allow for facilities that provide a full range of 24-hour direct medical nursing and other health services. Registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, and nurses' aides provide service prescribed by a residence physician. It is for those older adults who need health supervision but not hospitalization. The emphasis is on nursing care, but restorative physical, occupational, speech, and respiratory therapies are also provided. This level of care may also include specialized nursing services such as intravenous feeding or medication, tube feeding, injected medication, daily wound care, rehab services, and monitoring of unstable conditions. While that is exactly not what we do at RCA, it sounds a lot like it based on the testimony that you've had. So from a planning and a land use impacts point of view, I don't see the substantial detriment to your zone plan. I've been to the site, I've looked at the facility. So when you're looking at the negative criteria, of course, you want to minimize or mitigate any conditions with the imposition of reasonable conditions. I heard a lot of things at the prior hearing and at this hearing that I think that this board can do and impose as reasonable conditions to mitigate any negative or perceived negative conditions. I think clearly the overture that we would be willing to not act as an alternative to incarceration or the criminal justice system. So we are not here to house people who are using this as an alternative to escape prison. One of the truest things that I think Dr. Cree said is, we're not here housing bad people trying to get good. We're here housing sick people trying to get well. So when you think about the negative criteria, I think that that's certainly one thing that we can do. There are a number of other conditions, making sure that a person is not discharged into the community. There are certainly things that we can do to minimize any negative impacts. So I think, clearly, I think we meet our statutory burden of proof. The other thing that I'll speak to you is more from a personal level. I know there's been a lot of questions tonight about, who is going to be in this facility? Who comes to RCA? What type of people attend these type of facilities? Well, I can tell you right now, it's people like me. Certainly not families like mine. I'm certainly not in recovery. I wouldn't want to represent that to the board. But we did bury my daughter's father 3 Octobers ago. October 2nd of 2014, we lost my daughter's father to the battles of opioid addiction. So this is addiction that it is a disease that does not discriminate against financial, it does not discriminate on color, it is a sickness. The people who are coming here are sick and they're trying to get well and they need help. Just like you wouldn't have a cancer facility turned down, or if somebody died in a cancer facility, you wouldn't look at them as not doing their job properly. The work that's being done at recovery is an epidemic. The statistics that Dr. Carice provided were great. You almost can't scroll onto the AsburyParkPress.com without reading about somebody who was lost to addiction. When my ex-husband and my daughter's father was lost a few years ago, I called the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office and offered to come and speak to their groups because, like I said, you wouldn't expect upper middle income Rumson residents who are well educated, who belong to beach clubs and country clubs. That's who you may have at your facilities. So I beg the board, please, accept this application, impose reasonable conditions on it. It's your legal right to do it. But I think that this application has certainly met its statutory burden of proof for the grant of the use variance. It is categorically an inherently beneficial use. That's not just my opinion, it's certainly the opinion of the assignment judge in Mercer County. I think the board can impose reasonable conditions to ensure that the use is granted with no substantial detriment to the public, and I really would encourage the board to allow for this facility to operate at this location, and I do think with that we've met our burden of proof.
Thank you, Ms. Tefone. Would you like to add anything else, or you think you've covered everything?
I think I've covered everything, and Mr. Higgins, of course, testified at length last month on the positive. Mr. Higgins testified, of course, last month at length on the positive and negative criteria. Mr. Leon Cavallo indicated that it was his opinion as well that it was an inherently beneficial use. So I think you have 3 planners with lots of experience who are all in agreement that it's an inherently beneficial use.
Thank you, Ms. Cofone. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any direct questions of this witness. I don't know you or your professionals or any members of the board.
Any questions?
No. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, we don't have any further witnesses on direct presentation. Obviously, everyone's here to answer questions that the board may have or the public as we proceed. So I turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, one quick question. I see these posters around here. Was someone going to explain what they were? I didn't look at them myself. The red dots, the scale, you know, the bar scale over there. I was just wondering.
We certainly can have someone explain them. They were here at the last meeting. Obviously, one is of the site plan, and there are other depictions of the facilities. We can have somebody walk you through those exhibits if you would want to.
Well, actually, I think the only one that's marked probably is the site plan, right?
That's correct.
So the other ones are just unmarked exhibits,
Right. And
informational.
It's informational
all right.
and more for the public's benefit.
All right,
They're
thank
really
you.
not for the board's benefit. They're not evidentiary. They're not for your consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to the public. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this application? Sir, come on up. It is also noted to the public or anyone, if you want to look at these exhibits, feel free to do so at any time. Yes, sir.
Sir, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name and address for the record.
My name is Dennis O'Leary. My last name is spelled O''Leary.
And your address, sir?
711 Sunshine Court, Parlin, New Jersey.
Thank you.
And that's the Harbor Club, directly across.
Parlin.
Thank you. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak here. It's been a couple of meetings now, waiting patiently to have a conversation with this board.
The mic isn't working.
It's not working?
No, I have
Am I going to speak it up a little hard?
Just hold
I
it.
speak pretty loud, so I don't want to blow anybody's ears out. I heard a lot of conversation over these last 2 meetings about beneficial use, fair housing, Americans with Disabilities Act, as if what's being supplanted is not of beneficial use. Ratios. How many nursing homes are in the town of Saraville at this time? Can anybody answer that question? Can anybody tell me from the zoning board? We have 1. Everybody in Saraville, the ratio is 1 nursing home. Now, that's a beneficial use with no downside. But somehow, over the last course of all these testimonies, that's just been pushed aside as if, you know, the community should just absorb that, and that the zoning board should just bow to the fact that we should supplant a need in our community amongst our elderly, amongst our individuals that need geriatric care, as if somehow in the equation of things that are necessary and beneficial to this town are just somehow put aside for whatever pressing need or whatever monetary incentive happens to be the du jour. There's a beneficial use. In 1967, there was an election that was held in this town by the individuals on this wall, a Miss Peggy Kerr. I don't know if you guys are familiar with who she is. My grandmother came alongside of her during that election. And one of the things I learned in Sayreville from my grandmother was that when it's time to speak up in Sayreville for what's good for Sayreville, you get up and you go, and you serve and you speak. So I want to thank the board for coming here and enduring meetings like I've just witnessed for the last 2 times, and all this testimony. Discrimination, I heard some of that conversations being leveled at the board. It's discriminatory to just cast off our elderly in this town for the sake of whatever we see as the new thing that we should be doing. You know, there's been testimony about who's going to keep an eye on these people. They can leave whenever they want. Nobody can stop them. 2 o'clock in the morning, they walk down the hill from that facility. They end up on Ernston Road. It's uphill that way. It's uphill that way. But the Harbor Club is straight across from there. Where are they going to go at 2 o'clock in the morning? There's been testimony, there's no phones. They have nothing. They might need to find something, some kind of means to move on. Nobody can stop them. There's no guards there. They can come and go as they please. For a very large facility that RCA hasn't had the experience of running. My mother was supposed to be here tonight. My mother worked 30 years in the nursing home business. I learned a lot from her. I learned a lot from my grandmother about how politics works, about how the zoning boards work. I'm not going to stand here and allow anybody to say that the geriatric care and the only nursing home in this community needs to be set aside as somehow it's a non-beneficial use. It's an absolute beneficial use. You know, I returned from the military service after 10 years. I grew up in Sayreville. I was born in '67. I was born in that year that they ran on this board, in this town, in this mayorship. And I came back to a community where my grandmother went into Kennedy Park, the 55 and older community there. And it was a wonderful thing that she ended up there. But the potential was that she could have gotten old enough to where she might have needed some nursing home care. And we had the nursing home on Ernston Road. I got out and I bought into Harbor Club because my parents lived there. And I bought across the street and I brought the grandkids home, and we had a community there. My grandmother passed away. My parents moved to Spinnaker Point, a new 55 and older community, adjacent to Harbor Club, adjacent to the nursing home on the hill. But now, that's not a beneficial use now. That's a different kind of use. We got a new use with downsides, right across from a residential area where there's really nowhere for the people who live in that community to go. People in different stages of their life getting ready to move in possible nursing home care, close to their friends and family. Just telegraphed to you that we've stayed very close in Sayreville all these years. So I think it's a bit hubris, and it's frankly offensive that somehow we have to make room for whatever's new. It has a detriment to it. So that's really what I wanted to come out here and say and impress upon this board, that my grandmother said, get up and do what's right, speak up when it's right, do what's right for Sayreville. And I'm counting on this board to reject this proposal till 11th hour, bait and switch, a nursing home that we've been counting on to become some kind of new, unknown, not sure how much staff, not sure how many parking spots we need, not sure if we're going to put a fence up behind the perimeter, not sure if they're going to get to the parkway or to our kids' schools right down the street. Not really sure, but we're pretty sure it's going to be okay. And I reject that. I'm not here to grandstand. I'm just saying my piece. That's really all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service, too, by the way, sir.
Ms. Lee, please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, and address for the record.
Certainly. Deborah Lee, L-E-E is the last name. I live at 72 Prusakowski Boulevard in Parlin. That is at the Spinnaker Point community that Dennis just referenced. I wanted to comment on this because for us, it's the same concerns. We are an active adult community. We're here now maybe 13, 14 years. We're not so active, we're not so young any longer. The idea of having a nursing home in town, accessible to all of our homes, was very important to us because as we age, and we've seen our residents already use the nursing facility, have it convenient so that we could go back and forth, visit our loved ones there. Additionally, between the Harbor Club and Spinnaker Point, there's another community being constructed, another adult community. I could see them having the same concerns and needs as we do for having a nursing home there. To have no nursing homes in town puts all of us at risk, having to run back and forth or not have a convenient location for our families as they age. So that's concern number one. The other thing that really disturbs me is the outpatient aspect of this. I understand that they're supposed to be escorted in and out by vehicles, but how do you manage that? How do you monitor it? So we could have potentially, there's a bus stop right there, right next to the home that's being built. We could have people coming and going, not being monitored, not being in vehicles. No one's really going to know. You can say you're going to do that, but you can't police that day and night. There's a school within walking distance. There's the Harbor Club there. I have no problem with supporting these facilities. It is a beneficial use. I don't disagree with that, but not in a residential community next to a school. There's land in Sayreville. This just happens to be convenient for this concern because they can move right into an existing facility. Go build one. Go build one that isn't in a residential neighborhood, and I'll support you completely in Sayreville.
Thank you.
Sir, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name and address for the record.
My name is Robert Rasa, R-A-S-A, 49 Scheid Drive, Parlin, New Jersey. No one here is really denying the need for these type of treatment centers. My concerns, as stated from the last meeting, Dr. Carice had spoke, was really about the outpatient situation. Just for the record, I wanted you to know that I'm going into my 36th year now working in the perioperative area as a clinical consultant with medical devices, specializing in anesthesia, airway management. I'm in most of the hospitals in New Jersey on a daily basis in operating rooms. I see a lot. I'm legally bound by HIPAA laws not to profess or speak about anything going on, but staffing situation is definitely a concern in the evenings. We're talking about different types of patients, different types of clinical outcomes, as opposed to patients who have cancer, patients versus patients who have addiction issues. The staff-to-patient ratio in the evenings, if I heard correctly, sounded like somewhere around 15 to maybe, benefit of the doubt, 20 people per 134 beds. 250 cameras, which I heard at the November 8th meeting. Someone watching the grounds, expecting all the packages, taking everything from these patients or potential patients as they're coming in. But there's an overdose in-house, an in-house overdose. How do we account for that? How did they get the drugs? Someone on the board mentioned that maybe it was an inside job, quote. Or maybe someone just bent down and tied their shoe outside. These are concerns that we have as residents in the area about how do we handle these situations in the off hours? What happens? Nothing good happens at 2 in the morning. You're absolutely correct. And and I've seen this with my own eyes, all right? I've seen doctors, nurses, janitors be walked out in handcuffs during the evening because of drugs, because of taking drugs in their pockets. So anything could happen, and we're dealing with 330 million variables in this country at minimum. They call people. Everybody's different. Everybody has different needs. Everybody has different clinical issues. No two people are the same. I think what we're trying to do here as residents is to try to ensure the safety of our own community in those types of situations, I don't think anybody's denying the need for a treatment center, for an inpatient treatment center. This looks like a hotel. I mean, what can I say wrong about the construction and how it's built? But again, the gentleman in the back made a very good point. We are a generation now where we're starting to get older, where there's a need for us to be taken care of. And as residents of the town, we would like to see the opportunity of having more of that here. But as he had stated so eloquently, this is the new thing. We hear it on commercials from the governor. We understand these issues. We do know these issues. I see these issues on a day-to-day basis. What I'm mostly concerned about is the protection of the children that are in Eisenhower, of the residents, of the goings-on of the police lights flashing in the middle of the night. These are concerns that we have to take into consideration. It was my understanding that the home was rebuilt for the purposes of a skilled nursing facility. That was the original, and I've been here 30 years, and I saw it before, and I've seen it be built. And this is exactly what our intentions were, that this was going to be a nursing home. That's great. Beautiful place. The variance of use just came into play. How did that happen? A lease is already prepared, a 55-year lease. I believe 15 years with 4 or 5 10-year options. I'm also a landlord for commercial and residential property in New York. So I know that these things are prepared and with the expectation that this is sort of like a done deal. If that's the way it is, I think we're all doing ourselves a big injustice. I think we need to really look a little bit further into the ramifications of what this will be 5 years from now, 5 months from now, 10 years from now. How it's going to impact us as residents. Because for myself speaking personally, I'm going to be downsizing, looking for something smaller in the area. And a lot of us are. We're getting to that age. There's no guarantee that I'm not going to need nursing care. No one has that guarantee. It'd be nice to know I wouldn't have to go too far away for it. You know, that's what my main concern is. And I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Sir, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, address for the record.
My name is Paul Lieberman, L-I-E, B as in boy, E-R-M-A-N. And my address is 24 Ledarczyk Place, Parlin, New Jersey.
Thank you.
I happen to live behind the Harbor Club, behind the Spinnaker Point. I'm actually at the landings of Spinnaker's Point and also on the board there. I have a 6-year-old daughter who's going to be 7, and she doesn't go to Eisenhower, but she comes here to OLV. And I sit there and I talk to so many of the different parents that actually do have children in Eisenhower, and they're very concerned about it. A lot of them couldn't come tonight because of the holidays this evening, as well as them being out. I'd actually like to even make a motion to adjourn this meeting for this evening, because I think that they need to prove from Boston that that is completely cleared before something like this could ever be approved in this area. I think that first and foremost, before anything is even considered, that needs to be completely taken care of and cleared, and making sure, because everything that everybody's reading in the news and everything else is saying just the opposite and the contrary to. The CEO that was talking to about $2,500, I'm sorry to come back to this, but bottom line, he said it was $2,500 a month. That to me is 5 days a month for charity. And if that's really the case, I really think corporate should come up with a number. If they're going to be not only issuing different types of scholarships, I think that should be written in stone of what that should be based on the revenue that's going to come in for them from that facility. I have no issues with Recovery of America in Sayreville. I do think it's also a need. I also do think we need this nursing home. But I think they should choose another site. I think they should choose a site that's probably a little bit more in the commercial area that won't affect as many residents as it is. If you take a look at the statistics of these recovery centers, outpatient centers, methadone clinics, even though they say they're not going to be, crime has gone up in those areas. California is a perfect example of that. You can take a look in California, in every single county that these centers are in, crime has gone up by over 34%. You can take a look at the statistics yourself. Okay, I am worried that the same thing's going to happen to here. The gentleman this evening that said that somebody can walk out, that is correct. One security guard in that whole facility for 100. I worked with Health and Hospitals Corporation in New York. I've worked with the nursing skilled facilities at Gouverneur Hospital. I have worked with Jacobi Medical Center for their senior. I have worked with Mount Sinai for so many different of the senior population programs, as well as the different methadone clinics all throughout the Bronx for Bronx Lebanon Hospital. And every single one of those areas are indigent areas that need this type of program. And I'm not saying that Sayreville doesn't have a need. Like they said, look at this, it becomes a hotel. But the bottom line is, I don't think it could happen here. It just can't happen in our own backyards. That's all I'm saying. We have a school that's right there. We have a neighborhood. They're talking about grounds of 24-hour, 24/7 groundskeepers. I'm sorry, look at the size of this facility. One person's going to walk that entire facility. One person's going to sit there and look at all the mail. One person's going to make sure that every single part of that facility is protected. I don't think so. Take a look at Gouverneur Hospital. It probably has about almost twice as many beds as this facility does. There's 27 security guards at that facility, and that's a long-term nursing facility. So how can only one do it? You tell me. That's all I have to say.
Sir, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, and address for the record.
My name is Dennis O'Leary Sr. I live in 7 Wajikowski in Spinnaker Point. And I'm happy to hear some of the things that were said at the last meeting. You gave an example of a beneficial use. The benefits outweigh the negative. And you said you asked the question, is a nursing home a good example of that? And I think a nursing home is a good example of that. And you heard some of the witnesses at the last meeting say, we're sort of a nursing home. We're the same thing as a nursing home. And Mr. Mishansky, the zoning officer, he made a very good analogy. He said it could sort of look like a duck and it sort of sound like a duck, but you know, it's a goose. It's not a nursing home, and it might have some negative effects, this place. I have here something that was published in the Journal of Sustainable Real Estate in 2014. It says that the homes in the area of a treatment center that includes addiction to heroin or morphine, the home values are reduced by anywhere from 15 to 17%. So that is a negative impact. Really, a nursing home, this is the only nursing home in Sayreville. And when you walk out the door of this place, there is 400 some units in the Harbor Club. You walk behind there's a new plan, the Regent's Wharf, 96 units. If you go behind there is Spinnaker Point, where 100 units, and then the landings are next to that. If you go right under the bridge, you have La Mer and you have the school. So there's really, if you walk out the door of this nursing home, there's probably 1,600 residences that are there. So within 10 minutes walk of this driveway, there's probably 1,600 homes. There's nothing else. There's no stores. There's no, the last meeting, we heard testimony that the patients might come and go by public transportation. There is no public transportation coming to and from this place. There's a 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning bus to New York City. That's the only transportation. You got to go several miles to go to a train or a bus. So I think that is one of the negative. There's no place else to go. If you know, it was said earlier. It was said, if I'm in there, I can walk out the door. I can walk out the door, and there's nowhere else for me to go. Nobody can stop me. It was mentioned that you can't call the police. I'm not a criminal. So I can come and go as I please. Where am I going to go? I have no phone. You took my phone. You took my money. What am I going to do if I walk out of this place? So, I mean, a nursing home this is the only nursing home in Sayreville, and I hope we keep the nurse. I mean, I saw the owner of the facility, of the property here, and my wife is just retired a while back from a business office of a nursing home, and the operator works for the facility that this gentleman owns. He's known as a very good man. So I'd just like to end with that. Please, you might make more money with this Recovery Center of America. But do the right thing. We need a nursing home in this town. Do the right thing. You could do it.
Yes.
Sir, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name and address for the record.
My name is Prasanna Kulkarni. Last name is Kulkarni. And my address is 26 Lodarczyk Place, WLODARCZYK Place, Parlin, New Jersey. So I am one of the residents from Landing. Paul is my neighbor, and we are at the walking distance of this facility. I just want to bring a slightly different perspective than what other gentlemen brought in. I am one of the, younger generations with very small kids, 6-month-old and a 4-year-old, commuters to New York. There are many like me who reach home at 8 o'clock or so. So that's why probably we don't see people like us. My main concern is that we are raising kids. We are sending them to the primary school, which is just 200 feet from this facility. And we all know that these are the kids who are extremely curious. My 4-year one is so curious. He asks questions about everything. Definitely he's going to ask questions about the cops and the cars and all sorts of things that he's going to see near the school. His curiosity may not be nothing else, but just out of his curiosity, he and kids like him are going to try, or they might think of things that they are not supposed to, or they are that we don't want them to. And the reason why we bought this house here, because we found a very, this place as very nice, that gives us a peace of mind. My wife and I, both of us work in New York. So while we are out, we feel very secure in the neighborhood. But as soon as I heard about it, and believe me, it was extremely difficult to find it out. Coincidentally, Paul told me about it, but I'm sure many of people like me are not even aware of this thing going on. And I am having sleepless nights because after the tough commute and the lifestyle that we have, the only thing we want is peace of mind, an environment where we feel comfortable raising our kids, and just to hear the word drug and whatever it is, there is enough justification everyone has given. Just to hear the word, my 4-year-old is going to ask, "Dad, what is this? And why is this? Why there are cops here?" And it just brings so many things to my mind, and I'm sure it will bring to everyone in my age group. And obviously, I was not even aware that that's a nursing home, and I completely support to everyone else's argument of having a nursing home, because that is the only nursing home over there. And obviously, you want to set up these kind of facilities, please do set up in commercial areas, not near schools. I mean, I wouldn't even imagine making money or increasing revenue or changing anything by setting this thing up or justifying to raise this facility 200 feet next to a primary school. If it is next to a college, at least the college kids have education, and they are at least they know what is good and what is bad. But how about primary school kids, and how about their curiosity? So I am shocked to hear about this case, and I really urge the board members to not approve this, and please encourage to even not approve such facilities near primary schools anywhere in the country. It's not a Sayreville issue, it's basically a moral issue for everybody. So that's all I want to say.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Sir, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will.
Please state your name, spelling your last name.
It's
address
Irvin,
for the
E-R-V-I-N.
Wait.
My name is Irvin Agoston. Name is Irvin, E-R-V-I-N. Last name is Agoston, A-G-O-S-T-O-N. The reason I moved like 12 years ago to 14 Wildarcy Place in Parley, New Jersey. 14 Wildarcy Place in Parley, New Jersey. That's on the Atlantis. I spent 5 years with my wife looking for the perfect home. We checked criminal records, we looked Long Island, Massachusetts, everywhere. And we fell in love in this place. So I work long hours, I come home, I feel home. Safety, I can leave the house open, the car open, all those beautiful things that anybody can wish to have. And that's what I have for my kid. And I feel very, very good to have that for him. And now suddenly I feel that, when we purchased the house, the economy went down on the ground. And it's not my case. I think it was the whole country. The house went almost to less than a half of the price. And we choose to stay. A lot of people lose their houses, foreclosures everywhere. I didn't care. I worked double just to make sure that I keep my house. I pay taxes. I do everything right for my family to stay in this place. And I choose Sandy Camp, and also it makes a lot of damage to our neighbors next to it, and we choose to stay. And right now we are recovering a little bit. We're still very low underwater our prices of the houses, and now we feel that we're never gonna even recover or anything. But besides that, the fact of what really intrigues me is I respect these facilities, but I don't think it's appropriate to have it in our neighbors. I think it's the double moral issue. I had a problem with that, always. because I was raised right, and we had a choice in life. And you choose, and we choose, and whatever you choose, you pay for it. And I grew up that way. And when I say double morality, we don't have enough money to teach in our schools to our children not to use drugs, not to do this, not to do that, because we are pure communities trying to reach our kids to grow up to be a good persons. And now we have a facility that wants to profit our pockets, because that's what I see in it. I don't see any, I see the use and the helpful for the community. But I don't see it on our neighbors. I see it like this double issue moral. I would like to ask, how many drug users are in Seville? Did you guys have the record? I don't think so. How many of you people live in the area? I believe none of you. How many of you had a drug rehabilitation center near to your home? I would like you to bring the proof to the councils. Any of you did raise their hand, just bring it with your name and.
Sir, do me a favor, address the board.
Yes.
We don't want you addressing the public. You can address the board.
Okay. And just, that's my bigger concern here is, we really, we like to have a right conscious mind. I want to grow older, making sure that I choose the right for my family, and I'm part of this town now, and I will fight the right way without discriminating nobody. But I think that I hear wonderful things about the senior citizens for older people. That's a wonderful case, and helping people in need, it will be great, but not in our area. I think that we have plenty of places. I see Deco, Pure, there are all those places that work for sale and renting. The right facilities is just across the street from where the facilities are. So I thank you very much for your time, and please do this for your grandchildren and your children, because that's the right thing to do. Not to do it in our neighbor, please.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this application?
By a show of hands, how many other people would like to speak this evening? By a show of hands, anyone else interested in speaking this evening, just so we can gauge the time? Okay, so this will be the last speaker then. Okay. Ma'am, please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, address for the record.
Yes. My name is Zenabel Sewell, last name Sewell. And I live at the Harbor Club, 1907 Bay Head Drive. I just want to say to you that when you consider this application for the change of the area from a nursing home to this drug rehab center, just think of the residents who live across the street. Think of us having invested all our earnings to purchase these homes. Think about what we are going to lose and not being able to get back on our investments. Think about the people who have to commute into the city every day. I commute into the city every day. I take the bus, that limited service bus that goes into New York in the morning and come home in the evenings. Most of the time, when I'm getting off the bus, it's dark. Think about us, think about our safety, and just remember that we have to be considered in the process. Yes, this facility needs to be somewhere, but I do not think that that is an ideal location for a facility like that. And you, as members of the community and our elected leaders, need to take that into consideration. You need to remember your citizens when you make your decisions. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this application? Anyone else? There's no one else. I make a motion that the public portion of this application be closed.
Second.
Public portion is closed.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to request, before we break for this evening, I would like an opportunity to talk to your counsel about an issue that he raised during the break, and I would like to be able to discuss that with him. It may impact his direction on where we go from here. And would you just give me 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Be very brief.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. We should. Well, and in the event that we don't have the thing, and we'll hold it till February. They're just gonna have to wait. But I think it's important that we see that.
Oh, yeah.
Members see
I agree with you.
3 or 4 meetings there. Tough application. It's a tough application. You know, it's not an application. It's 5 years down the road, 3 years down the road. It's a lot of things. Hang it out, okay?
With my boys here.
Whoa.
Yeah, is it 10 o'clock? Oh, it's after 10 o'clock.
10 after 10.
Oh, my God.
10 wins. The only good thing about this is I will go home and immediately fall asleep. Yeah, 9 o'clock. Be here at 9 o'clock. I guarantee you we'll sit there for half an hour again. Anytime they tell you to show up for something or be here at a certain time, half an hour later you're going to wait at least half an hour. The new product I saw in Walleye, it's nicotine gum. But more, it's more working for good. Oh, yeah? Because they see me drinking the energy drinks and say, you're going to kill your heart. Blah, blah, blah.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
Hated thing to fall asleep in court. The jury. Judge does not like you. Sense of humor, explains everything, and you go, I'm going to read this to you. If you do not understand something, put your hand up, and I will try to explain it to you better. So I want you to understand imminence. with it to deliberate. There was an elderly woman, and she says, "The judge give us right in front of me, black and white. What is the meaning of beyond a reasonable?"
Did you find that other rent law file?
Yeah.
Where was
I
it?
had it out.
Oh, okay.
Some of you seem surprised. He said, a lot of us, I said, we didn't know it was going out. The next time you're going to send a note out, everybody should know about the note. That being said, I will give you the definition of what we in court find it beyond a reasonable doubt. Hear the evidence, pay it. You hope. I think he's guilty. He's sure. You can maybe have a little bit of it after pretty good three trials. These were the three guys that went into that room. You're not sure. You've got a reasonable doubt of innocence. And you have to stick to that. Whole thing. Then we went back and argued some more.
Together, yes. There.
Thing is that force themselves into a small apartment, go into the bedroom, knock the stuff over, and leave, taking nothing. So we're talking about that in the room, and I says, I think they weren't in there. I think they made a mistake. The way it looks to me, they went in and saw three people, grandma, mom, and the kid. And that's not who they expected to stay. And they didn't have what they wanted. They looked for some very specific thing in front of their life. For them, their car was parked in a handicapped spot, the motor running. As soon as they got in the car, the policeman was right there.
I think there's 3, possibly 4. And then Gillette, the temple, and the 2 billboards.
Nah, relax. It's Christmas Eve and everything. I got a beef about it. What are you talking about? I got all the women. Reading there and everything like that. Now I know is, where's the black people? Don't we have no miracles at Christmas? What? Think about it. Go and watch their movies one day. Oh, fuck. 10 hours in a row. And tell me how many black people
Messed us up was nobody coming to the July meeting. That said everything back that no one came to. I had to rearrange everything, and it's just been ongoing since.
The sheriff's officers now have any Christmas decorations.
I know it sounds stupid, but it was only one.
Medals they might have gotten and their patches.
Did I tell you that? Did someone? Yeah, didn't someone call you?
At this very moment, what is Gillette? What's up there? The building?
I think Frank told me that. because it's in the street. Anything related to the street is police.
What's in there? Is there anything in there?
Brand new construction.
It's tough for nursing homes. Independent are making profit these days.
They went to court. I think Frank was taking them to court. You can call them and ask them. We don't get any paperwork.
Certified letter. Swami. The letter has to be, just has to be signed by the person. Swami. Swami's the son. Eddie can't touch it. You had to give it to the guy. I had to give it to the Swami signed. He gave it to the guy. And then he was all bent out of shape. I don't think he is. You don't want to get touched by me. I'll come jump over the thing and I'll smack him one. Eddie, that's the thing. I believe that, the really high level Swami are sacred. You do not touch them.
Give them 5 minutes, give them till 10:25. If they're not, then I'll go get them, because we want to get out of here.
You got the Fisher application?
In a second, we're giving the applicant an opportunity to work out things with the property owner. You know what, you want to do the resolutions? We could do that. Wait, give him 5 minutes. We'll do the resolutions at the end. What does he need right? I told him, so get me the additional information. What happened in Massachusetts? Satisfy this board that the stamping is adequate. Then we'll take a vote. Any more testimony after this? You know, if they come back in January, we'll have 5 minutes of us talking about what they provided to us, and we'll make a motion. I told the planner, the engineer, and the traffic engineer that they gave great testimony tonight.
Yeah, they did.
That's what they say. Best testimony I've ever heard. Said nothing. I told John Ray he was great tonight. John Ray was great tonight.
You're right, those people in the back.
Yeah, they're all from there.
From there. I don't know
have their staff. I think they may be some patients. Yeah, a couple of patients, but these are suffice that they have a requirement to speak. It's a good news.
Graduated from his university. Sent the application, he sent the copy of the diploma already. Mr. Moravito, not here enough. I told him yesterday when I was at one of the report. I passed the course, I went to 3 different courses. Your license was restored on December 1st. What you gotta do is bring in $100 and you get your license.
I'm going to call a meeting back to order.
Mr. Chairman, I want to first thank you for the recess, and I do apologize.
Do a roll call.
First thing I need to do a roll call.
Thank you.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Here.
Mr. Kreismer? Mr. Callow?
Here.
Mr. Corrigan?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Emma?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Okay. Proceed.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I've had an opportunity to talk to your council during the break, and it's my understanding that, as you know, Mr. Sachs has asked for certain information, and he would like to see to him in writing from me. One concerns the staffing and the shifts that would be incorporated in a proposed facility here in Sayreville, and I'm prepared to do that, obviously with the assistance of the applicant. And the second, Mr. Sachs is asking for information and confirmation as to the closure of the investigation in Massachusetts and information relating to that investigation, both deficiencies and closure. And I also will be submitting that to Mr. Sachs before your next meeting.
Very good.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, I guess in light of that, and those are the two things that we really need. You know, I mentioned that probably several hours ago at this point, that those were some of the things that I thought the board would require. So if Mr. Himmelman will provide that, I think what we can do is carry this application to the next meeting. Quite frankly, I don't think you'll have any additional testimony except if there's any questions regarding what's provided.
Correct.
All right. You know, the public has spoken. Certainly, we'll have to do a public portion at that point. But I would imagine after that is concluded, there'll be a vote on this application very early in the evening of the next meeting.
Yes.
All right. So that would be the 24th of January?
That's...
Is that the meeting, 24th of January?
All right.
Correct,
So,
Mr.
Mr.
Sachs.
Chairman, what we'll do is we'll carry this application to January 24th at 7:30 p.m. I know we have a few bulk variances that evening, which take about 5 minutes each, and then
Right.
you'll be number one on the list.
Very much appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Sachs, and the board members.
The
That's all right.
only
Gotta
thing
take care
that
of this
could
one.
possibly hold this up is if we don't have the results back on the investigation out of Massachusetts.
No, I have that information, and I'm getting it to Mr. Sachs.
Okay. As long as we have all that information, we'll be ready to proceed on that date.
Duly noted.
Mr. Chairman, is there a time period that they're going to have to submit this so we can have a chance to look at that information?
I will get you the information within the next several days to Mr. Sachs.
So you'll have it well in advance of that meeting. So if anyone, I know there's members of the public here this evening. You will not receive any further notice of the rescheduling of this meeting. I'm going to give it to you right now. This meeting will be carried till Wednesday, January 24th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and we look forward to coming back January 24th. And happy holidays and happy New Year.
To you.
Okay, thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, just, will there be a public session at that
Yes,
meeting?
we always have to have a public session,
Okay.
so we'll have one more public session.
Okay.
See them drag bags all over East New Brunswick.
Krzyzewski, so he's sitting
Right in
home,
the top
keeps
landing.
sending me text messages.
Walking up the street, and I'm looking down the street.
Yeah, I'll do that too. I'll
Oh,
read that
what are you
one.
doing here? I said, "What a jury." Told them we'll put in an application for the Democratic family.
Okay, I have some resolutions that need to be taken care of. First resolution is application 17-24.
Chairman, I can't hear you.
I have some resolutions that need to be taken care of. Application 17-24, Ronaldo Alameda, 34 Gardner Place.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the resolution be approved as written.
Second?
Roll call. Yes.
Yes.
And I hate to be a nitpicker, but I do read these things.
Yeah, sure, I'm glad somebody does.
And, let's see, we get into, and this is for all of the resolutions.
Yep.
Therefore, be it resolved that, and get all other representations offered by the applicants and its professionals.
Mhm.
We said there were, the person was here pro se. I know that's a minor point.
Yeah, that's probably been on the resolutions I've been doing for the last 10 years.
And the second item I had is the, number 3, the applicant is to comply with all requirements. Should that be with the exception of, the variance?
Well, no, they've been granted, we want to make sure that they comply with all requirements, but obviously, we know that they've been granted a variance
Yeah.
in this particular situation
Do we
for a
need to-
minimum.
Do we need to state that? Because now it says they have to comply with all requirements.
They do, but obviously, they've been granted a variance, so,
Okay,
all right?
okay.
Duly noted.
Ms. Cataldo?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes. Okay, the next one is application 17-26, Mary Ann Ozick, 37 Pulaski Avenue.
Make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
Second motion.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Kreisler?
Yes.
Ms. Cataldo?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes. Application 17-32, Louis Alvarado, 50 Bamehurst Avenue. What's the pleasure of the board on regarding this application?
Make a motion, we accept the resolution.
Second the motion.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Kreisler?
Yes.
Ms. Cataldo?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
I have one more resolution, which I'm not sure I sent to everybody, because it was actually done for the last meeting. Did people receive the Fisher one? All right, so you know what, let me do this. I do have a few copies, but I'm going to read this one into the record, just so we can save some time, all right? And I apologize, but I actually intended this one to be on for our last meeting in November, that special meeting, and we just never got to it. Let me read this one in then. This is application 1704, Fisher Street Associates LLC, 5 Fisher Street. The applicant is requesting use variance, bulk variance, design waivers, preliminary and final major site plan approval to convert an existing 4,248 square foot former restaurant into a 3-tenant retail facility, including a hardware store with associated site improvements. Let me get to the important aspects of this. The applicant is seeking use variance, major site plan approval for modifications to an existing business located on a .61 acre parcel at the intersection of MacArthur Avenue and Fisher Street. The applicant is proposing to convert the existing 4,248 square foot former restaurant into a 3-tenant retail facility. One of the proposed tenants will be Total Hardware. A 2,080 square foot addition for covered storage and merchandise display is also proposed for use by Total Hardware. Modifications to the site lighting and landscaping are also proposed. Use variance and site plan approval, which allowed for the construction of a 118-seat, 4,248 square foot restaurant diner, was originally granted in 2003. That approval also included 1,052 square feet of second floor storage, an outdoor 41 vehicle parking area and loading area, along with associated lighting and landscaping, were also included with the original approval. The variance relief is a use variance, as the retail facility is not permitted in the R7 zone, and bulk variances for minimum rear yard setback, side yard setback, combined side yard setback, maximum building lot coverage, maximum impervious lot coverage. There was testimony from Ms. Alessandra Conti, who was the operator of the business. There was testimony from Mr. Walter Hopkin, who was the professional engineer and planner, and that was the professional testimony. The applicant also requested and the board granted design waivers for parking area and a front yard setback area within 5 feet of a property line, a minimum 50-foot landscape buffer area, a minimum width of 30 feet for two-way site driveways for non-residential uses, a minimum of 20% of the subject site to be landscaped, and a minimum of 5% of said landscaping along right-of-way areas, street trees along all site frontage at a spacing of 50 feet, and a minimum of 10% of all proposed parking areas landscaped about the interior. Said waivers were granted as either pre-existing nonconformities or necessary to accommodate the proposed use and de minimis in nature. The applicant agreed to comply with the recommendations of Mr. Cornell in his October 25th memorandum and with Mr. Leoncavallo's memorandum of October 23rd. All right, so let me just go to the specific conditions of approval. Applicant is to all the representations are incorporated by reference. All agreed upon recommendations in the reports of borough professionals are incorporated. To comply with all requirements, statutes, and ordinances, to pay all required fees, escrow bonds, and inspection fees, to receive all permits and approvals prior to commencing any construction, and to comply with all requirements of the construction code official. And real quickly, let me just go over some of the detail of the representations made. Ms. Conti testified that the business operates 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sunday. There are 41 existing parking spaces, 6 part-time employees. Deliveries occur 1 day per week at approximately 10 a.m. by way of a tractor trailer, and the applicant agreed that the second floor of the building will not be utilized for any residential purposes. And Mr. Hopkin, let me just see what, Mr. Hopkin noted that in terms of parking, utilizing the standards of the B1 zone, there would be no parking variance required, that a new refuse enclosure will be provided, ADA parking spaces will be provided and striped, and new signage is proposed, which will conform with ordinance requirements. Delivery trucks are expected to back into the proposed loading area. Turning templates will be provided for the review and approval of the staff. The applicant stated, Mr. Hopkins stated that any dead vegetation on site will be removed and replanted with live material. And Mr. Hopkins was also the planner who indicated that this could be granted without any detriment to the zoning ordinance, zone plan, and master plan. So I apologize for not sending it to everybody, but we approved this on October 25th, so we'll memorialize it this evening.
Roll call.
Now we need a motion first.
I move that it be approved as written.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Now roll call.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Kreismer?
Yes.
Ms. Cataldo?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Emma?
Yes.
Thank you for that indulgence. All right, now we're done.
Okay, the only other thing I want to mention before we adjourn is that January's meeting is the 24th, and that's our reorg meeting. That will be at 7 o'clock instead of 7:30. I have some research to do on that reorg meeting. I might have to change that till February. I'll let you know, but I'll call each and every member and advise them as such in case that has to be done that way. What we did this year. That's what we did,
February.
we did it in
Yeah.
February. We
Yeah.
might have to do that again,
That we're sick and, we weren't gonna have everyone.
but I'll let everybody know beforehand if we have to change the reorg from January to February. Do we have the Temple coming in January? We do.
We'll see. I'm not sure.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, the next thing I need is a motion to adjourn.
Minutes.
Oh, well, has everyone had the opportunity to look over the minutes of our last meeting?
Yes.
If so, I need a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Now I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Meeting's adjourned.
Good holiday to everybody.
Happy holidays. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, can we send a note to the BA to get some decent microphones? I don't think we've had one meeting where we've had this year where the microphones work.
You don't like me to be.
We're always having mic.
Either that or good batteries.
The batteries don't work. What kind of batteries do you burn out?
Have a good holiday, guys.
Yes.
Joan, have a good trip.
Yeah.
Don't forget your stuff on the floor there, Ronnie.
Have a nice Christmas.
You too.